quite big. I mean, it is that small,
Right.
and not to mention like there are predators in the water.
Yeah.
It's not, it's not just a nice swimming pool.
No, I know.
But yeah, we were out there with my oldest kids class. We took them to Stingray City, and it's like, okay, try to make this a happy thing so kids don't know anything that's going on. But you look over and you see all the search boats and the helicopter, and just like at that moment, you're like, oh, it's been so long now. You just feel bad.
Yeah,
it's just a tragic accident that could have been avoided.
Yeah, do we know any more about how it happened, or?
How, did they not find out?
Yeah, so yesterday morning, we actually had Commander Robert Scotland come on the program.
Mm-hmm.
And what they seem to know is that he did fall overboard sometime, they think around 7:30, but no one knows exactly because no one saw him.
Oh.
So it was a couple minutes before they noticed that he was missing.
Wow. And what kind of boat is this?
The search area is kind of
but what's the Tortuga? Is it the Tortuga one of the bigger boats? Like how many people could be on it?
Over 40 people. I'll show you a picture of it actually, Aaron.
Oh, okay.
There it is. So they said over 40 people on it. And, unfortunately, because they don't know exactly where he would have fallen off, I think that complicated the search efforts.
So the boat kept going. In other words, it wasn't still.
Precisely. So that's why they were searching between Starfish Point and the Governor's Sound. So,
That'd be longer than a couple minutes.
Well, and think about it. Like if the music is playing, is
right.
You can't hear anything.
Yeah, definitely the logistics of so unfortunate, but definitely the logistics of going missing in the water at night. The commander also shared that presents a much more difficult situation than most people would realize.
Yeah, terrifying.
So it's easy for us to say, oh, they should be easy to find, but it's not quite that easy.
Yeah, and it's just sad for his family back at home in his home country, like. Just not knowing all the details and probably.
You said he's from Sri Lanka?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
That's sad.
So, and then I saw some people commenting, well, why weren't they wearing life vests? I'm like, I've never been on a party boat and saw anybody wearing a life vest.
Well, nobody does typically on boats.
Yeah, I mean, that's
those are like precautionary for if you're sinking, you go and grab one, but no one's going to wear one just.
Yeah.
Because anyway, you don't think like, oh, these people are going to fall off. And it doesn't happen often. It has happened a few times since I've been on island in my 11 years. But it's just always unfortunate. And it's booze in the water.
Typically, the only time that I've been asked to wear a life preserver was like on a jet ski.
Yeah.
Which does make a bit more sense, I think. You can turn the wrong way, flip off, that kind of get a big rogue wave if you're out in the sound and be knocked off, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so you can get back to the jet ski, flip it back over.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Of course.
Yeah.
But
or if you were to flip and knock your head, you don't want to be knocked out in the water either. So that I can see the, wearing a life vest for that,
It's not, people aren't going to. And then, I know they sit there and then they're like, well, now it's people drinking on the water. It's like, well, the captains of the boat are taking a party boat out. So they're, they're facilitating a party boat. They're not the ones that are drunk, hopefully. You know what I mean? So just one person it's just an unfortunate accident. And you can't blame the people.
Party boats have been going on in Cayman since Christopher Columbus arrived.
Yep.
I think he had a party boat.
Probably before he got here even.
Yeah, exactly. Any other news stories this morning?
We've got the premier who's going to be joining us in a little bit.
Oh, cool.
And he's going to be explaining vaccine mandates, like who needs to be concerned about it and who isn't. A lot of people are confused.
Are you going to pressure him on ask him, are the borders opening before the end of the year?
Well, we can certainly ask. And I guess he can tell us. I don't know what the answer will be.
Are you hearing those rumors as well?
Everybody's saying that, right? Everybody's still saying November, because I think some other ministers have said that November is not completely off the cards, but saying something's not completely off the cards isn't to me the same as saying we're opening.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's kind of like, there's a window possibility. It's still there. How big is that window?
I mean, but we still don't have enough
I don't
flights if we
know.
do open. Like American Airlines and all them aren't coming back till next year. So
yeah, it's going to be tough. And, you know, to Aaron's point, I think a lot of people already in their minds, like visitors said, okay, it's not going to happen this year.
yeah.
So there might be a few people that would show up kind of last minute, but
my family would come if they could find a flight.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, I went to physio yesterday, and I, you know, my physiotherapist was like, you would know when the borders reopen. I'm like, I don't actually know. So
they don't consult you.
I know. I think my guess is really just as good as anybody else's in terms of that. But I think we'll have to wait and see a little bit. There's some people who are of the mind that we should wait until Christmas. They're like, give us Christmas. And I don't know. You know, there are other people like, yeah, I want Christmas with my family. So,
yeah, but yeah, exactly. And what's the difference? Give us till Christmas. Like, what are we to not have a community transmission? Oops.
Well, I think that's it. People are like, I don't want to go.
They don't want to be stressed
during
out.
Christmas because
but we're already in community transmission.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're thinking
it
that
could be a lot more rampant
now and Christmas.
Yeah.
It could lead to actually, you know, a lockdown situation. So
yeah, the way this community is, it would spread really fast, and it could get out of control pretty quickly.
Wow.
That's what a lot of people think.
What a wonderful thing to have a vaccine free and readily available.
Right? I agree, Aaron. Tomorrow, by the way, is the deadline, Sandy, for getting that second jab, the DMS vaccine drive, $100,000 giveaway.
I know.
So if you're up for the second vaccine, make sure you get it by tomorrow to be in for the draw.
And I'm seeing, I just saw a post this morning where someone said they finally decided to take the vaccine plunge, and they went and got vaccinated, and they did it for their family. So, yeah, some people are still, you know, definitely getting it done. So I think that's great.
Good.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for the update.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Catch Sandy on YouTube and Facebook with CMR. We'll see you tomorrow.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Bye.
Aaron, what do you got coming up with celebrity stuff?
All right, folks. So we are on our backup YouTube channel this morning. We gotta do a backup YouTube channel, a backup Facebook channel. Looks like YouTube is confused again. They seem to get confused. So they have said, and I don't know if this is a situation where someone is purposely reporting videos, but I guess that could be. That someone has reported that a video is fake COVID news when it actually wasn't. It was one of our CMR Spotlight series, and it's actually factual COVID information. So as usual, we have appealed it and said, just watch the video. Like, this artificial intelligence situation is a little bit frustrating. And sorry. Yeah, so we have appealed it, and I'm sure they'll come back by today or tomorrow and said, oops, sorry, we made a mistake. So yeah, it's just crazy. It's amazing to me that we fight for real news to be out in the atmosphere, and the fake news people have such an easy time propagating their stuff. And I see all these fake videos that are still up, and I'm thinking, how does the artificial intelligence work exactly? Like, I don't quite get it. But that's why we have a backup channel. So we have 2 CMR channels on YouTube. You can just search for the second one. And I see we do have a number of people who have found it this morning. So we use it as a backup. When the other one's up, I think more people follow that one. So Obviously, it's going to be easier to find. As soon as we get that video released and we're out of YouTube jail, we'll be good to go. So yeah, isn't this frustrating? It would be nice to have a platform that nobody controls, which is our website. We have that. But the social media platforms, especially for pushing out video, are really, really important. I keep looking for solutions to just stream directly to the website. And I wonder if I could get your feedback on that in terms of what you guys think. Is it easier to just switch to the website? Because I know most of you are on social media, you kind of get those notifications, and it takes a bit more to do native video from the website, but eventually we're going to get there. So yeah. All right. So good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Hope you guys are doing well. We are waiting for the premier to be joining us. So as soon as he comes on, we will be ready to hit the road. So, all right. In the meantime, let's talk about a few other things in the news. So good morning to Marshall. Good morning to Wee Wee. Larry's here. So if you missed the show last night, please do go back and have a look at it. It was very, very informative. We had Dr. T on, as well as Dr. Nash, who is, well-versed in infectious diseases, airborne diseases, and so on. And he talked about a number of things which were incredibly interesting. So it's kind of one of those things where you see, okay, a person doesn't quite have this information right, and they're still doubling down on their position. It's very bizarre how people are not open. Like, their cognitive biases are so strong in what they believe that they're not willing to say, you know what, I am wrong. I don't, one thing I must say about Dr. T is he admitted at the beginning of the show that he's not a COVID expert. So whatever he says, I guess, it's just an opinion piece. It's not factual information. And there were some things that I know he was saying that were completely wrong. So an inordinate amount of time, unfortunately, was spent on this question of whether or not the FDA has granted final approval to Pfizer to essentially final authorization or full authorization to Pfizer for the vaccine. He says, no, it's not been granted. I'm thinking, how is it that Alice says the show was epic? I'm thinking, how is it that the FDA has said they've given full approval, Pfizer said they're giving approval, like literally every single news site in the world has said they've given full approval, but yet Dr. T, Katina, and Mario know something different. I'm just like, that to me that defies logic. Like, it doesn't even make any sense. You know what I mean? I mean, how can you be so right and everybody else is so wrong? So I have to wonder. I mean, Dr. T he's a doctor. He's a smart guy, and I'm like, how does he think that when he says he has a contact at the FDA and his one contact has said, oh no, it's subject to, and I'm thinking, and everybody else is just interpreting this wrong. Like, when you hear that, you don't think, maybe I'm the one who's gotten it wrong. That's like saying 99% of clinicians say X, and you're the 1%er or the 0.1%er who's going to say, no, it's a different situation. Wouldn't you say maybe the 0.1%er, just forget medicine, everything else, just in life, that 0.1% or the chances of you actually being right is like winning the lottery twice, the mega ball twice in the same day. Like it's almost that level of impossibility. And when he was saying what he was saying about the those conditions, I thought, but you can have full authorization with ongoing requirements. And I think that that's a good thing. You know, big shout out to the FDA, because that is so important that they have said you can't drop the ball as it relates to your monitoring systems. We want you as the drug maker to continue to monitor this. I thought that was great. I was like, yes, that's what we want. That builds confidence, as far as I'm concerned, in the FDA. It's just so bizarre for me. Yeah, well, you know, Kevin was hosting the show last night, and there were times when I don't know, it was just kind of weird at times. We had some technical difficulties. I don't know why. That was the first show that we had technical difficulties for, so apologies for that. But yeah, it was just it was very, very interesting, I must tell you. So big shout out again to Kevin, who continues to put together some wonderful guests for the show. Good morning to Junior. Good morning, Daisy. Hero Blair's here. Good morning to you, my dear. Are you in Jamaica now? Yes, we are on our backup YouTube channel, Hero. I was Pastor Blair. I was just saying that our primary one is blocked because YouTube is confused again. So we've appealed that. So hopefully by tomorrow we'll be back on YouTube. But we are in the backup channel. So if you search, oh, my tennis elbow. You know what? I got tennis elbow, and then this morning I accidentally hit my elbow. You know how you do that sometimes? It's so painful. So I got a double whammy. So we are in Facebook, folks. It's just the backup channel. But yeah, if you're already here on YouTube, we're on YouTube, sorry, but it's the backup channel. But if you're already here, why not? Morning, Louie. Maya, good morning. Says there's a really good show, gave a good clarification to people who are still doubting that the vaccine is fully approved. Well, hopefully, if nothing else, that one point was proven. Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning, Sandra. Good morning, everyone in the beautiful Cayman Islands. I'm missing home.
Yes. Alice says the show was epic.
Glad people enjoyed the show.
Carol said the approval of the vaccine, ! 5 times. I needed alcohol at that point. And that was the first one coming out of the barn. Kevin, what did you think of that? Like, I was just saying that I'm a bit dumbfounded that anybody could still be making the point that the vaccine isn't fully approved. Yeah, and then I was getting confused because he was also saying that the one that we have in Cayman isn't fully approved, as though there was 2 different vaccines available.
I'm completely confused. I don't understand the reasoning. To me, the language that is on the FDA website that's publicly available to anyone is extremely clear. I said maybe even in the show, the only thing that I could think of where there's a little bit of confusion is that it's still under the emergency use authorization for the younger the kids. Yeah. Up until I think it's 11, but 12 and older is fully approved. But again, the only reason it's not received the full approval is because, again, they have to have all of the boxes checked and more data needs to come in before they get that. And you know, they've been forthcoming saying that that's going to likely happen in the near future as the age continues to drop as well in the not so distant future. So, and then it was hinted, just like you said, that there's different types of, the UK is getting a different type of Pfizer. That's simply not true. It's all coming from the same company. It's the UK will get some, Canada will get some, the United States will get some, whoever else is buying from Pfizer is going to get it. It's all the same vaccine. It's like if I buy a Aquafina bottled water, it's the Aquafina bottled water. It doesn't
like the
matter.
Company's going to make, I was thinking to myself, what are you saying, that the company's going to make a vaccine for like a specific country or jurisdiction that's different? Like, why would that even be done? That's weird.
Yeah, it just made no sense. And then he was saying, you know, really focusing on whoever his contact is at the FDA. I'm not sure when he received that email or whatever it was.
Can we get a copy of that, you think?
I just actually messaged him this morning, and he said he'll send it to me and make sure that I'll pass it on to you. But yeah, I literally just
because I'd love
messaged
to
him
reach out to that woman. I know he mentioned her name, but I'd love to reach out to her directly to see what her connections are with the FDA. The one thing that I must say, and I know there's a lot of people that worship the ground that Dr. T walks on. If he tells them, go jump in the ocean right now and you'll be fine, no life vest, just whatever, they're going to do it. And I thought to myself, when he was sort of doubling down on this point in particular, right? Now, to me, this isn't a very complex point to get. And so I wondered, why is he doubling down on this? If he genuinely doesn't understand that the vaccine does have full approval, and it has since August the 23rd for 11 and over,
12 and over, yeah,
12 and over, that if he's missing that point, which to me is such a simple point, are there more complex things that he'd be missing as well? You know what I mean? Like to me, if someone can't get something that in my view is such a simplistic thing to get, then I would take every single thing that comes after that with a big bucket of salt, not even a grain of salt.
Well, another thing is too, he's saying that he's not against mRNA vaccines. He's not against the vaccines, but yet he's not going to recommend it to your doctor. Well, I'm going to tell you, when I go to the doctor, I always ask my doctor, well, if I was your child, would you recommend this for me? I mean, I know you're my doctor. I know you can't tell me what to do. I completely get that. But please, I trust you because you're the expert, and I'm trusting you with my life. I'm trusting you to give me sound advice.
Yeah.
If you're not going to take it for yourself, and you're not going to allow your friends to take it, and in fact you're not very happy that your own family have taken it, I'm going to certainly question taking it. And so in that position, in my view, the way I receive that information, I'm going to say to myself, well, no, doctor doesn't want me to take this vaccine because he doesn't want to take it himself, nor does he want his family to take it. And so that's why I believe we do have some vaccine hesitancy in the Cayman Islands, and we're not getting more people vaccinated, because those who trust their doctor, who happens to be Dr. T, they're going to go with what he is saying that he's not going to do for himself, nor he wants his family to do it. But then he also said at the same time, he was back and forth with that topic. I don't know. I sent you the clip of, in different forums, he said it.
Yeah, let's have a look at this.
Let's take a look at different types of language that's been used.
You've done a good job of kind of putting this together. That adds a new layer to the situation. So yes, folks, let's have a quick look at this.
Excuse me? Why do I have problems with it? Who told you I have problems with it?
You have said that mRNA vaccines cause blood clots, and you do not believe that should be the only one. If I'm wrong, please correct me. And what is your views on mRNA vaccines?
Provide information to the public and to all of my patients, and that's what I do. But I didn't say that mRNA, that I am in complete disfavor of mRNA vaccines. I said I would not be taking one myself, because I do not want any synthesized viral genetic material entering my cell. I certainly will not be allowing that. And I think that people should have a choice. But I have never told anyone not to take an mRNA vaccine. I just give advice, and that's what I've been asked to do. Give advice. Advice means information. I provide information. If they ask me how the mRNA vaccine works, I provide that information. If they ask me how the Novavax vaccine is supposed to work whenever it becomes available, I give them that information. If they ask me how the Sinopharm supposedly works, I give them that information. If they ask me, Dr. Tomlinson, are you seeing any side effects from the Pfizer vaccine? anybody coming in and complaining of anything, and they believe that it's related to the Pfizer vaccine, I tell them, I give them that information. That is what I do. I don't tell people to take a vaccine or not to take it. And I'd like to make that publicly clear.
But as we watch what is going on in the rest of the world, what is happening now is that, and it's very baffling and concerning to doctors even, what is happening is that the vaccinated are starting to die like flies abroad. They are dying like flies in Israel and also in the United Kingdom. And 5 of us doctors met even yesterday to try to look into this matter and come up to a possible reason why this is happening. And we in fact decided that we will be consulting a well-known virologist abroad for an explanation. But a brilliant young Caymanian doctor by the name of Brandon Bernard, which most Caymanians know, said that this could very well be, you know, he's brilliant, he's just out of postgraduate medicine and has done it very well, and he's very successful. And he said this could be due to maladaptation of the immune system due to excessive stimulation of the immune system by the vaccine itself. So all of these factors have to be taken into consideration before mandating any vaccine. Moreover, I certainly believe that if you're going to mandate the vaccine, at least you should give people freedom of choice of vaccine. And I'm here to tell the Cayman public that the AstraZeneca is not really a choice of vaccine, because that's the same dog puppy as the mRNA vaccine, such as Pfizer and Moderna. It's the same dog puppy. So don't come to me with that about the AstraZeneca. What we need is their...
Can I just make a point there, Kevin, before we continue watching the rest of the video? The Pfizer Moderna vaccine versus the AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson, they're not the same dog puppy at all.
Nope.
I mean, there's nothing that could be farther from the truth. The 2 mRNA vaccines, which if you want to say they're the same dog puppy, if you want to use that colloquial term, would be Pfizer and Moderna. They're the 2 mRNA vaccines. The other ones, AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson, what else falls into that other category? They're made completely different. So they can't be the same dog puppy. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. And this is where people need to understand that if someone is going to say that to you, and that's a critical piece of misinformation, at some point I just tune out, because what else are you saying that is misinformation? But let's continue to listen.
4 broad categories of vaccines, because it's not looking too good. It's not looking pretty. Many of the people who've been vaccinated, and it concerns me because many of my patients went ahead and got vaccinated because of the prompting of government and others. And many of my relatives too and friends have been vaccinated, and none of us are quite sure. Nobody's quite sure what's going to be the outcome. So I question whether that decision that was made is even for the greater good in the Cayman community.
Dr. Thomason, would you say it's better to have natural immunity or immunity through vaccination?
Well, natural immunity, of course, is the best. But to get natural immunity, you have to get the disease. And I think what Dr. Nash is driving at, and I agree with him, you don't want people to get the disease. Therefore, there is a place for vaccination. Only that I don't think it should be mandated. That's my point, too. I don't believe it should be mandated, and I have reasons for that. I don't believe it should be mandated. That's my point.
And Sandra, I struggle trying to understand the point, because it's like he's saying 2 separate, completely opposing things, and I really had a hard time understanding what his real point is. But then I was thinking about it after the show, and I'm like, you know, and there's something that Dr. Nash agreed, especially where we're struggling to get more people vaccinated. And the point where I think he's trying to get to is perhaps he really wants a lot of other people, other vaccine choices. So, government only really has the AstraZeneca and the Pfizer. Maybe if we were able to bring in some of the other vaccines, because vaccinating anyone with some vaccine that is known to be a defense against COVID-19 is going to benefit people. Now, yes, some may argue that some are more effective than others, but at the same time, I believe his main point is he really wants the ability to be able to allow patients to be able to choose from a string of vaccines, because he did say he would get vaccinated if it was Sinopharm. That's the one he really wants for himself and his wife. But for the other patients that he has, he might recommend maybe another type of vaccine. I kind of think that's where he was going with it, but it's not really coming across that way.
So I have it on good authority. As of yesterday, I heard this, that that particular choice is going to come, because I've always been confused for people who say they're pro-choice. I was trying to get some clarity from the doctor last night. I said, so you're pro-choice for having other vaccine choices, or you're pro-choice for people saying no, that they don't want the vaccine at all? And I got the answer that was kind of like, well, pro-choice for whatever people want. But right before that, he had said he was pro-choice for the vaccine, like he wants people to have vaccine choice. And I thought, okay, that's a little bit unusual, but I have it on authorization that any vaccine approved by the World Health Organization will soon be available in the Cayman Islands. So we shall see then how much of a game changer that will potentially be. Did he ever answer the question? I know someone was asking about if he had any business interests or financial interests in bringing the Sinopharm vaccine to the Cayman Islands. Did he ever answer that question?
Did not answer that question. I don't think we actually got a chance to ask him, because as you know, the conversation kept on going in different directions. And I did see it in the chat. I know I didn't get to ask the question. It might have popped up on the screen at one of the times, but we also had a lot of, unfortunately, technical issues that we were trying to, not just listen to what's going on, but try to figure out what these audio issues were. And we finally, towards the end, really got a good momentum and we got going. But the first, I would say the first maybe 20, 30 minutes of the show, we were having some real struggles that kind of threw me off as well. But I'm glad that we were able to resolve those issues and really get going. And of course, we went into overtime. We actually had the show scheduled for an hour and we went for a full 2+ hours.
Yeah.
So and if you were looking at the traffic, it maintained. I was looking at the analytics last night, and most people stayed on, well, not most people, but a large percentage of people actually stayed on the entire time. So we had a lot of people watching, and definitely, it's good to hear different views. Just because, I know what I prefer and what I really hope we have 100% people vaccinated in the Cayman Islands, at least close to it. At the same time, I still want other views, because the only way we learn is by listening to other views, and want to make sure that we're bringing those views forward. And I believe in the very end, I really believe that Dr. T was, he was genuinely curious and asking Dr. Yunash questions, because he realized Dr. Yunash is a very educated person on this type of thing. I mean, he leads one of the largest universities here, University of South Florida's Global Infectious Disease Program, and he has one of the biggest laboratories in Florida. That he knows this. This is his world. And so in the very end of the show, Dr. Thomason was asking him some questions because he didn't know the answers to those things. And I believe there were a lot of things that Dr. T did learn from it. And I'm hoping that Dr. T will, become more of an advocate to promote the vaccine, because ultimately he has a following. He has a lot of patients that will trust whatever he says. And so if he, looks into the data and sees, what I was saying might not have been exactly what I should have been promoting. Maybe I need to readjust a few things, and then now I need to really, look out for the best interests of public health and to serve his patients in that way.
We've got a question here from Jackie. So Jackie says, why are they not using things such as natural immunity? So that question was answered last night. Jackie, the short answer is this. For you to get natural immunity, that means that you have to be infected with the vaccine. The risk of you getting seriously ill or dying from an actual infection is so great that no physician with any degree of proper medical training should be making that recommendation to you, because once you get it, they can't control what the outcome will be. And so it's a matter of risk versus benefits. If you get it naturally and you survive, you don't have long haul COVID, you don't get myocarditis and all these other things, and you don't die, then you have that protection. And even with that, the recommendation is still to get vaccinated, because it gives you the best combination is if you've had natural protection, you survive, get vaccinated, and all the research is pointing towards those individuals having the best outcomes for a secondary infection and so on. So that's the short answer as to why natural immunity, as some people are trying to call it, herd-based immunity, based on everyone getting it, is not a good idea. And you can't assume that because you have no comorbidities, that means that you're going to have a better fighting chance of surviving an infection, because we've also seen that hasn't happened. There have been people with absolutely no comorbidities who've been extremely, healthy otherwise. Fitness guru healthy, who have actually ended up passing away as a result of the infection. So
I just shared a video for us to see if we could play that, but that kind of adds to what you're saying with the natural immunity. And some countries have tried that, and they quickly saw, oh no, this is a bad idea. And because some of that was because hospital systems, even here in Florida, started to get overrun, where you had medical grade oxygen because you had so many people having breathing issues because this virus, really affected the lungs. And we have these large hospital systems with so much support around the nation. And Cayman only has that, two hospitals really, or 2-3 hospitals. We don't have the type of systems we have here in the United States. And we were in some serious trouble because the hospitals were so filled with people. Now, of course, our vaccination rates are much lower here in Florida and the United States than in Cayman. But at the same time, we have a fragile system in Cayman, because what happens when you get a bad accident or you have an advanced medical need?
Yeah, they don't even have enough blood in hand.
Exactly. Or they have to try to air ambulance you to Jamaica or America. And really, can you do that right now? It's not so easy. So did you have the video queued up? And Dr. Klotman from Baylor Health.
And then another part of her question, she talks about the $20 test. I'm supposing that is the rapid antigen test, which will be available here in the Cayman Islands shortly. But again, I hope you did watch the program last night, Jackie, because Dr. Nash explained why that is nowhere near as accurate as they would like it to be. I mean, you get it quickly, but you should certainly take those results with a degree of caution, because at least 20% of those are going to be completely inaccurate. So you rely on that, you might be having a problem. And then the last bit of the question is saying to rely on blood slides before the vaccine and after to show if there are changes before and after. I'm not really sure what that means in terms of changes from a blood slide, but let's go ahead and watch this video and then we'll look at some other comments.
If you look at the Israeli experience, they looked at the 7 million people that are 5 million people that have been vaccinated. They looked at who got hospitalized and who had a bad outcome and died. It was of all the people who've been vaccinated, it was only about 400 or 500 people in the entire country who'd been vaccinated and had a very serious outcome. And of those 400, they were almost all over the age of 75 or 80. 40% of them had an immune problem, a disease that was affected their immune responses. So the point is that if you get vaccinated, it is highly protective for you for serious illness and death. The other thing is it takes both vaccinations. So, when people get one and say, well, I'm pretty good. It's not pretty good. You need both vaccinations. And what we're finding out with the Pfizer vaccine, if you're over the age of 60, or if you're exposed to a lot of virus, you probably need a booster as well after about 6 or 8 months.
Yeah. So Mary's asking about the efficacy of the vaccine. She didn't specify which vaccine, so maybe we can have a look at a few of them because we do have a comparative. And again, this information is constantly being looked at in terms of the Delta variant, which did change the efficacy of the vaccine. So let me, this is from Yale Medicine, Mary. So hopefully they're a trusted source that stand behind what they say. So for the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine, we are looking at how well it works. So experts continue to learn about Pfizer's efficacy both in the laboratory and in the real world. Pfizer's initial phase 3 clinical data presented in December showed its vaccine to have 95% efficacy. In April, the company announced the vaccine had 91.3% efficacy against COVID-19 based on measuring how well it prevented symptomatic COVID-19 infection 7 days through up to 6 months after the second dose. It's also been found to be 100% effective in preventing severe disease as defined by the CDC. I think that's dropped slightly because of the Delta variant, and 95% effective in preventing severe disease as defined by the FDA. So the CDC and the FDA have slightly different definitions for what they consider severe disease. So there was another study that was not yet peer reviewed that showed that the efficacy because of the Delta variant was down to 84% after 6 months. And against the same study found that, however, against severe disease, it was 97%. So in August, the CDC also published studies that showed the mRNA vaccine protection against infection might be waning, although the vaccines are still highly effective against hospitalization. So efficacy there's different things that you look at in terms of efficacy. And a CDC study, which got data from New York, showed that vaccine efficacy was anywhere from 91 to 75% against infection. So there's infection efficacy, and then there's serious disease or serious illness, which would be hospitalization, and then there's efficacy in terms of death. So obviously, infection is one thing, but death and serious hospitalization are two different things. So when it comes to the mutations, it says here that in early May, the Pfizer vaccine was found to be about 95% effective against severe disease or death from the Alpha variant, which was the first detected in the UK. The Beta variant, first identified in South Africa, and that was 2 real-world studies. As far as the Delta variant goes, 2 studies reported by Public Health England, which have not yet been peer-reviewed, show that the Pfizer vaccine after 2 doses is about 88% effective against symptomatic disease and 96% effective against hospitalization. Israel also reported the vaccine's effectiveness to be 90% against severe disease and about 40% against infection in their population in late June and early July. So they're looking at some national statistics there. Moderna efficacy is about the same, but I think Moderna actually tends to trend a little bit higher than Pfizer. So that one was in December about 95%. After 6 months, the efficacy was 90% against infection. And that's important because people keep running around saying, oh, well, you can still get infected. You can still get infected. But if you have efficacy of 90%, that means that only 10%, that's why they're calling it breakthrough infections, that only 10% of the people with the Moderna vaccine and a little bit less with Pfizer are actually even getting infected. And then more than 95% against developing a severe case. And they do have a study in the New England Journal of Medicine that found the Moderna vaccine to be 96.3% effective in preventing symptomatic illness in healthcare workers, compared to 88.8% for Pfizer. So that's where Moderna seems to be tracking a little bit better than Pfizer. And another study from the CDC, Moderna's effectiveness against hospitalization, held study over a 4-month period, where Pfizer's fell from 91 to 77%. So that research is still a little bit limited and still coming in. In terms of mutations, again, a study in June showed that the vaccine is effective against the Beta, the Delta, the Eta, and the Kappa variants. although it did show that it was about 2 times weaker against the Delta variant. So the Delta variant has been a real game changer, folks. The Johnson & Johnson is a very different situation. So they're like 72% overall efficacy, 80% efficacy against moderate and severe disease. And again, the way that Johnson & Johnson works is incredibly different. And the mutations drop that to something like 71% effective against hospitalization and up to 95% effective against death. The other vaccines, AstraZeneca, we're looking at efficacy rates in the 76% range, 74%, 60% when you're talking about Delta against symptomatic disease, but still quite good at 93% effective against hospitalization. So Novavax, which is another option, was highly effective in clinical trials. So unlike the mRNA and vector vaccines, this one is a protein adjuvant vaccine, which basically means an adjuvant is an ingredient used to strengthen the immune response. So these vaccines trick the body's cells into creating parts of the virus that can trigger the immune system. So it takes a very different approach in terms of how it works, right?
And you can get really buried in a lot of these numbers and stuff, but just to really summarize it, really, okay, if you get fully vaccinated, you complete the series of whatever vaccine you get, it's going to really lower the chance of you dying, simply put.
Right.
Now, it will not necessarily stop you from getting sick, but it will certainly lower the chance of you getting sick. So you have a higher chance of getting sick, but you have a much higher chance of not dying. Yes. So really important key point.
And let me just say this. I think maybe her question, although it was very broad, maybe her question should have been about the efficacy of Sinopharm, which I see Nona is actually asking. Now that's a very different situation. You're looking at about 50%. So it's a significant drop in efficacy. So I think it's in Brazil, they were at 49.6% against symptomatic infection for the Sinopharm. And then you're looking at, I think about 50%. It goes up slightly when you've had both dosages. So no substantive data available for Sinopharm on transmission. And, that's something that they're continuing to track. So listen, the bottom line is this. We were talking about last night that there was an NPR report that they just talked about breakthrough infections and how, breakthrough infections might not actually be such a big transmission risk. So there is a difference between getting the virus and actually transmitting the virus. So let me just play this audio clip, Kevin, for 1 quick second. So just give me a moment here. And then, because I think this is actually worth listening to.
Conventional wisdom says if you're vaccinated and you get a breakthrough infection with the coronavirus, you can transmit that infection to someone else and make them sick. But as NPR's Joe Palca reports, new evidence suggests even though that may happen, breakthrough infections may not represent the threat to others that scientists originally thought.
In Provincetown, Massachusetts this summer, a lot of vaccinated people got infected with the coronavirus. And the assumption was that this was an example of vaccinated people with breakthrough infections giving their disease to other vaccinated people. But Ross Kettle says there's a problem with that conclusion.
In all these cases where you have these big breakthrough infections, there's always unvaccinated people in the room.
Kettle is an immunologist at the University of Colorado School of Medicine. He says it's hard to prove that an infected vaccinated person actually was responsible for transmitting their infection to someone else.
I have seen no one report actually trying to trace whether or not the people who were vaccinated and got infected are certainly downstream and could only possibly be downstream of another vaccinated person.
One of the reasons Kettle thinks people with breakthrough infections are less likely to infect someone else is some new research, albeit preliminary, on what kinds of antibodies the vaccines provoke. Initially, most vaccine experts predicted that mRNA vaccines, like the ones made by Pfizer and Moderna, that are injected into someone's arm muscle, would generate the kinds of antibodies that circulate throughout the body. Mikhail Kaspi-Tal is a visiting scientist at MIT.
I think what was the big surprise here is the extent to which the mRNA vaccines are going beyond that.
What Tal has found is that in addition to the circulating antibodies, there are a surprisingly large amount of antibodies in mucosal membranes in the nose and mouth, two of the primary entry points for the coronavirus. Jennifer Gommerman of the University of Toronto found this as well.
This is the first example where we can show that a local mucosal immune response is made even though the person got the vaccine in an intramuscular delivery.
If there are antibodies in the mucosal membranes, they would be coating any virus that gets into the nose or throat. So any virus that was exhaled by a sneeze or a cough would likely be less infectious. Gommerman says most scientists have assumed that a vaccine would have to be delivered directly to the mucosal tissue to generate antibodies in the nose or throat.
Obviously, a mucosal vaccination would be great too, but at least we're not sitting ducks. Otherwise, everyone would be getting breakthrough infection.
Now, these studies by Gommerman and Tal have yet to undergo peer review, and some have already suggested the antibodies may not really be true mucosal immunity. But there's other evidence that a vaccinated person's breakthrough infection may not transmit efficiently to others. Marion Pepper is an immunologist at the University of Washington. She says a recent study from the Netherlands looked at how well virus from vaccinated people could infect cells in the lab. Pepper says the answer was not well.
If you actually isolate virus from people who are getting a secondary infection after being vaccinated, that virus is less good at infecting cells. And so it's not known why, is it covered with an antibody? Maybe has it been hit by some other kind of immune mediators, cytokines, things like that? Maybe, nobody really knows, but the virus does seem to be less viable coming from a vaccinated person.
More studies are emerging that suggest there's something different about the virus coming from a vaccinated person, something that may help prevent transmission. Whatever it is, Ross Kettle says it's one more reason getting vaccinated is a good idea.
Because you're going to be even more protected yourself, and you're going to be better off protecting other people.
Kettle says that's what you call a win-win situation. Joe Palca, NPR News.
And now more from NPR.
So hopefully, folks, that's helpful information, because I think what we need to recognize, which is a point, and Premier, I do see you driving, by the way. I'm trying to give you an actual opportunity to get to work, so that I don't know how far off you are, but so that you can get in front of your webcam and probably be a little bit more comfortable. But I do see you, just in case you're wondering. So Kevin, one of the interesting things about this is that the data is still coming in. So everyone is willing to accept, the professional community, the experts are willing to say, listen, there's a lot that we don't know. And I'm glad Dr. Nash said this last night. He can't claim to be a COVID expert because COVID, we're like 2 years in. So of course he's on the front lines. He is an expert in other things, but he is learning just like everyone else. And the data and the information that is becoming available on a daily basis, because these are real world details that are being collected, that are helping people to come to these types of conclusions. I can tell you, the scientific and medical world are constantly evaluating this information. They're looking at groups, they're looking at very specific questions. So this question really is, if you get infected, if you get a breakthrough infection, how well or not do you actually infect other people or transmit it to other people? And that's important because, if there's a significant reduction, that means that this theory of, vaccinated people are in the same boat as unvaccinated people is far, far from the truth, not just as it relates to hospitalization and severe illness, but they're in a far different situation, even as it comes to transmitting it to different people. So when you have office environments, we're saying, listen, if someone is vaccinated, we're going to give them the option of not wearing a mask. We're going to allow them to walk around the office a little bit more freely. Although the recommendation is if you're in crowded areas, high contagion areas, you will want to protect yourself and others by still wearing a mask, still sanitizing your hands and so on. You can see the logic for those types of policies because this person is not as likely, even if they get infected, they're not as likely to transmit it to other people. So that's significant. The other thing I wanted to make a note of is a lot of people talk about emergency use authorization, right? And I don't think a lot of people recognize that even the Sinopharm and the Sinovac, I think is the other one, they have gotten emergency use authorization from the World Health Organization. So a lot of these Chinese vaccines that people are relying on, they don't have full authorization from the World Health Organization, or they went through very similar processes in terms of how they received vaccination approval as well from these leading agencies around the world. So I think that that's really important. We're going to pull up a video here in relation to that in just a second. Now, Kevin, one other point that I think is worth mentioning, I see that Rachel is saying that she was talking about how tests can show natural immunity the same way a tethered test does.
So I could comment on that. The only test you could really find out if a person already had the virus would be the antibody test. That is the blood test, but it doesn't tell you from that test if you actually have COVID. It only looks at after
if you've had it.
Correct. So that's not a diagnostic type of test. That is a test to look back and said, okay, yep, you had it. Because and also the antibodies that will show up, they're different than what the type of antibodies you would get from the vaccine. So again, that's just looking back in history. It's not looking at today.
Right. The other point that Jackie makes here, that people are very scared of blood clots. So let's clarify this, Jackie, so that you fully understand that there's been no association with blood clots and the mRNA vaccine. The association, although very, very minute, is with the Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca vaccine. So you want to be very careful when you talk about blood clots and vaccines, because we actually have, according to all the information that we've seen, the safest options in the Pfizer vaccine when it comes to side effects. So yes, there's a slight chance of myocarditis in very young men who 99.99999% recover from without any issues. There's a higher chance of myocarditis if you actually get the infection. But let's not mix and muddle. You know, it's not the same. What was the phrase that Dr. T used? The same dog, puppy, dog, or whatever. Yeah, it's not the same thing. It's not freaking. You can't just throw it all together. There is a difference. So the Pfizer vaccine, which the vast majority of people have had here in the Cayman Islands, does not have the side effects associated with blood clots. Okay.
Right.
The option that people say that they want, at least one of the options, the AstraZeneca and the Johnson & Johnson, they're completely different types of vaccines. And so therefore, there is that slight chance of a blood clot being associated with those. Let's watch another video clip here, Kevin.
Let's kind of talk about, the approval process. What goes into vaccine approvals? I know that's what you guys are doing to figure out what other vaccine options might become available and who it should be given to, just to know a little bit more about that. So let's pretty much walk us through from beginning to it gets EUA or ultimately full FDA approval. Let's go through that process.
I guess I can jump in and try and answer that. So in order for the FDA to approve a trial, it has to, or any particular drug, for example, or an investigational drug, it has to go through a series of trials. So there are different phases of every clinical trial of a drug, where phase 1 is sort of limited to just a few individuals just for monitoring major safety effects of the drug. And then they move to phase 2 of the trial, where it's usually about 100 or so people and can last a few months, where again, they're looking at just broad efficacy, whether the drug is intended to achieve what it was designed to do, and also looking at any important side effects. And then following that is when the real sort of phase 3 trial goes in, where you evaluate close to like anywhere between 2,000 to 3,000 people, where you again look to make sure that the vaccine or the drug is very effective in doing what it was supposed to do, in either protecting patients or developing antibodies, or protecting against major disease. And then usually when you've completed about these first 3 phases, or when you completed even the first 2 phases, a company that's making the drug or the vaccine can apply to the FDA and discuss what they are doing in terms of their trial. And it's important to note that a lot of these trials, to meet the safety requirement, they're often what we call placebo-controlled trial, where you have 2 arms of patients, where one is getting the investigational drug and the other is getting nothing, basically, or we, in medical terms, sometimes it's just an injection of saline, where and then you compare to make sure that it's actually the drug that's causing the effect or not. So when you have the data and efficacy data and safety data from all these 3 phases, usually that's when the company would go to the FDA, submit all the data that they have, and ask for approval for a particular drug. And then at that point, the FDA can choose to do one of 2 things. So in the setting of COVID, where it was felt that the clinical need was so important that the FDA could not complete, or certain vaccine trials could not do the complete follow-up, which usually requires 1 or 2 years of follow-up, they may approve a vaccine or a drug for something called emergency use only, or that's the term that we use, say, EUA. Now, all that means is that, it has met a basic benchmark to make sure that it's safe, efficacious, and in our best interest and the FDA's best interest, that they think that it's going to be effective and important for releasing out to the public. At the same time, the onus is on the FDA as well as the manufacturers of the company to continue to make sure that there are no serious adverse events or not. So, for example, in the setting of COVID, initially a lot of in the US, 3 vaccines were approved under EUA: the Johnson & Johnson, the Moderna vaccine, as well as the Pfizer vaccine. And then in between, there were some side effects reported related to blood clots. So the FDA paused their EUA for J&J and issued an advisory that they need to do further evaluation. So it had stopped for a few days, and the FDA were able to review the data and felt that it was still safe to use and really reopened the EUA. Now, when you reached sufficient level of follow-up and met all the benchmarks, that's when the FDA can then proceed to go and give full approval for a drug or a vaccine. And that's what currently the Pfizer vaccine has gotten full FDA approval in the US for. And the other 2 drugs are still under EUA while they complete the necessary follow-up and requirements that the FDA needs in order to get full approval of a drug.
And I believe the FDA has a emergency use authorization for Pfizer for 12 and 15 still. Why is that age group not yet fully approved by the FDA? Explain that a bit.
So I think it's got to do again with, like I said, about how the study, initial studies are designed, or the clinical trials are designed in order to get the data. So initially, the Pfizer company focused their efforts on obtaining clinical data on people 16 years and above, and they were able to collect all that information and the relevant data and submit that to the FDA to prove that it's still efficacious and the side effects are minimal and acceptable side effects. So that's why the FDA granted full approval for 16 and above, whereas Pfizer had not fully completed all the requirements, including the follow-ups for the age groups of 12 to 15. But they still felt that it was still quite efficacious. So that's why the EUA still is present, but for the ages 12 to 15, the Pfizer vaccine is under EUA approval and not full FDA approval. And for less than 12 years, currently none of the vaccines are approved, because I think the next step is to focus a lot on the on younger patients, basically. So it all depends on how the initial studies were designed, and what's kind of safety and efficacy data that the companies and the FDA are able to gather through these studies.
Sandra, you are muted.
Thanks, Kevin.
You always do that. I'm like always
know.
messaging you when I see it. I'm like, Sandra,
Trust me.
learn to unmute.
I know. Nona says, why would a doctor try to push a vaccine that is far less effective than the other vaccines? I don't get it. Mary says she's referring to the Pfizer vaccine. So yes, we've definitely covered that. Rachel says Sinopharm is a more old-fashioned type of vaccine. So if you're an old-fashioned type of doctor and you just like things that you know and have experience, you might feel more drawn to it because mRNA technology is new to you. Well, it still dates back 50 years, so it might be new to him, but it's certainly not new to the other professionals in the research and development of the mRNA technology, that's for sure. But doctors have an obligation to keep up with new medical breakthroughs and get out of their comfort zone and learn the new things. We all need to keep learning from experts. That's an interesting point, Rachel, because I've said this before. And I remember years ago, a doctor said to me, I had gone to the HSA to get a consult with Dr. Carlos Sedano. And Dr. Carlos Sedano had recommended a particular procedure, but the way in which he was doing the procedure was a bit outdated. And when I spoke to someone else, the other person said to me, listen, a physician will push what he or she is comfortable with. So if they tell you they're going to perform a particular procedure in a particular way, that means that that is where they feel like they are more likely to do a better job, where their comfort zone is, where their level of expertise is. And so they may not necessarily be using the latest and greatest techniques. And so on the one hand, you don't necessarily want to say to that physician, well, I want you to try this new technique on me if they haven't had, their hands in it for a minute, because you would be taking a risk yourself. So what you want to do in cases like that is seek out second, third, fourth opinions from individuals who are a little bit more well-versed in other techniques if you're looking for something. And there are even medical procedures, cosmetic procedures and other things. There are new ways of performing them that can save people's lives, that can cause less scarring, less side effects, et cetera, et cetera. But you've got to know and trust that the person who's doing it has actually kept up with those things. I'll give you an example. Dr. Dial has been featured in, I want to say it's the Harvard Medical Journal, for a particular type of technique when he goes in and does an exploratory, I think he goes through the navel area, and his method of doing it cuts down the chances of you accidentally nipping someone's bowels by like 90-something%, which is one of the side effects of doing this type of procedure. You go in, you accidentally nick someone's, I think it might be a C-section. I can't remember exactly what the procedure is, but anyway, you do it in a particular way. And I think it's actually been coined the Dr. Diallo's method of whatever the surgery is. Somebody will be able, I know certain doctors who are aware of this or listening, but they'll have to tell me exactly what it's called. But his technique has been applauded by the medical profession, by Harvard University and others as, this newer technique developed by this, doctor, who's a Cayman Islands resident and status holder for many, many years, is what you want to do. So if you can learn this technique and do it effectively, this will cut down the chances of your patients actually having their bowels nipped, which is something that can cause severe infection, sepsis, and lead to somebody dying, right? And keeping up with medical advances is important. Yes, you might know how to do something the old way, but there's a reason why medicine develops, why technology develops, why building a house develops. The way that you built a house 50 years ago, especially in light of like hurricane principles and reinforcement of roofs and whatever, probably isn't the same way that you're going to build it in 2021. So Jackie says blood clots are not myocarditis. We never said that they were. Blood clots.
I think she was responding to someone else's comment. I was kind of watching that. That's
okay.
in response to someone else's comment on it.
Okay. So yes, they're different things, folks. They're not related at all. So Maria has a comment. Let me just, we've got quite a few comments. So let's get through some of these. So Mary says both can spread it. So regardless whether it's been or said proven that the vaccinated is less likely to spread it, I think it's discriminating to have the unvaccinated with masks sitting at their desk daily. Okay. I mean, both can spread it, but if you're talking about one person who's going to spread it almost 100% versus somebody who's not going to spread it at 90-something%, that's still a significant difference. So I can understand the policy from the perspective of just looking at the science. Okay, Jackie, again, clotting is not associated with the vaccines that are being used here. Soka says, Soka, what happened to your account, by the way? Did you get blocked by Facebook? I noticed that, I swear that I saw one called, your old account was called Soka something, and then I saw another one said Soka Unleashed or something, and now you're Soka Phillips. What's going on with your account? She said, I found a new name for Sandra's show, CMRNA. Thank you. So Mary says the majority of our population is vaccinated, and their first case some months ago was a vaccinated person. Are there any stats on the children that are contracting the disease? Are their parents or adults around them vaccinated? It's a good question, actually, Mary, and we can certainly ask it of the healthcare professionals. I would hope that they are keeping track of that information. They've not really broken it down in that particular way. They're just telling us for the infected people whether they are vaccinated or not. So I
just want to touch on that point real quick, Sandra. And this just shows real life examples that, you know what, the vaccines are working. We are seeing more cases popping up in children right now. And a large reason for that is because they are unvaccinated, because they're not yet eligible. Now, we do know that for some period of time, which we do not know exactly for how long, but we do know that COVID has been in community spread for some time. We have a very high population of vaccinated individuals. So they may have been exposed from their kids multiple times and just never got it or showed symptoms because they are fully vaccinated. And then the children who are not vaccinated, they end up getting it, spreading it amongst themselves because they don't have that protection. So it just shows that we have a really good situation that we're in, where we have such a high population that is fully vaccinated. So that's going to really reduce the chance of that community spread. It's not going to stop it, but it certainly does help. I've given the example before. Just because you go in a gunfight with a bulletproof vest doesn't mean you're not going to die.
Right. You just have a much better chance. Carolina says, what facility is this? I'm not sure what question she's
also responding to someone else's comments that I saw earlier that's unrelated to.
Oh, right. So Jackie's comment that says, what I'm saying is the doctors at our facilities are finding increased clotting. So then Carolina's saying what facilities? Because none of that has been reported in the Cayman Islands at all. So again, that's misinformation. Rara says, since people is lying here, I'm out. Bye-bye. Toodaloo. Why are you still commenting? Rara, you said you were out. Be a man or a woman or whatever you are of your word and be out for real. So no facility in the Cayman Islands. And again, since you're saying it, tell us what facility. There's only so many facilities here. What facilities are actually reporting that?
And Cayman's a small place. The few people that might have had some sort of issue, you're going to know about. So if you cannot bring those people forward, in fact, I've sent out it forward and posted it and asked people, if you know someone that had an adverse reaction, please reach out to me.
Come forward.
I want to know your story. If you want to be completely anonymous, you'll be 100% anonymous.
Yeah.
Reach out to me directly. Or if you want to tell your story, we will gladly share that out there. So if we have so many people in the Cayman Islands that is getting some sort of adverse reaction, I'm sure you're going to know somebody, because we are a community there that we know each other. We know everybody's business.
Of course. And I mean, I find it so hard to believe that people still believe that there's a way to cover up things in Cayman. I mean, somebody sneezes in West Bay and I know it 2 seconds later. even before the hospital, even before they get to the hospital, I already know, oh my gosh, this person has COVID or whatever. So it's so peculiar that to further the argument that everybody's dropping dead with, vaccine adverse effects, but yet nobody can't give me a specific name. They can't tell me who. The statistics show we actually have in the past 10 years, the lowest reported deaths on record. We have, a funeral home orders 10 caskets. That rumor or that situation turns into rumor. Oh my God, they've ordered thousands of caskets, and it's not them. The government has ordered thousands of caskets. And I'm like, why would the government be ordering caskets? So the first thing I do is I reach out to the funeral homes, and they laugh. They're like, what? And I said, yeah, these are the rumors that are out there right now. And they're like, okay. So we just ordered a shipment of 10 caskets. That's what we do. We are in the funeral home business. So we order caskets all the time. And right now, because of supply demand chain issues coming up in the last quarter of this year, we've ordered caskets going into next year because we know people are going to die between now and the first quarter of next year. So, I mean, even the funeral homes are finding it laughable when I go to them with these comments. And they're just like, this isn't what's happening. So, it's just absolutely crazy. I don't know. It's bizarre what people think. So Jackie is now referring to Minnesota and ND. Which state is ND? North Dakota? Okay, so that's not Cayman. She says, I don't know if I can say here publicly because they're already being punished for successfully using HCQ and ivermectin. Oh, Lord. Jackie, now you've lost the plot when you talk about that these things are 100% success. Now we know that everything that you have said previously to that is just like ridiculous. Soka confirms that she was in Facebook jail. I figured as much. Had to create a jailbreak page. I saw it. Yeah, I feel you. So Carolina says Jackie Bennett, well, the experience in Brazil may offer the argument. So, Lord, Jackie, get yourself together now. What a mess, Jackie. Anyway, okay. So Kevin, there's something else that you wanted to play. Let me just have a look.
That's the ivermectin and hydrochloroquine
yes.
video. We have a response from Dr. Klotman on that topic. I've chopped up a lot of clips just in response, listening to not just Sandy and Kevin. You're going to be hearing it directly from experts in the field. I'd rather you get the information from experts, and I'm just connecting the dots, connecting you all to the experts. So, Sandra, I sent you that video from the clip from the show.
Okay.
There hasn't been a lot of studies. Hydroxychloroquine has been studied and shown to be of no value. So there's no reason to do that. That's been proven. It was, again, I don't know why people make up solutions when we have one. We have a vaccine that works. Why would you make up something? Ivermectin, there is absolutely no biologic or pharmacologic reason why it would work. There's no evidence that it works. There's been no study that shows it works. CDC now has had several ivermectin poisoning. I have no idea why people jump to this. But yes, there are the same sort of misinformation. And some physicians have been propagating this, but there's no evidence. And again, why would you do something for which there is no evidence? When people are so reluctant, they're like, I don't want to get something in my body. Well, you're taking a pill that's good for parasites infections that we give to animals. So why would you think that's okay when we have a vaccine that's very safe and effective? So there's no reason to be using ivermectin. Now, maybe if a study comes out, and there are a couple studies going on that shows that ivermectin's a benefit, different story. But there's no data right now that would suggest that it's useful, and there's no reason why it would be. If you look at the biology of what it does, how it does, it's not an antiviral. So I don't know why it would. There's now a new antiviral coming out. Merck just announced that. It may be really important. It's probably better than remdesivir. It's not as good as the monoclonals, but it inhibits the viral replication, and it cuts hospitalizations by half. In parts of the country, the world that are not able to get vaccinated, it's a 4 or 5 day pill regimen. I think that is going to be effective. If we do anything, you should take that pill once it's approved, not ivermectin, because there's a study that shows that it works.
All right, folks, and that study literally came out, I think it was last week or week before. Merck has applied now formally for FDA approval. I'm guessing that might be emergency use approval for that pill as well. But it was so effective. And again, let's be very, very clear here. It's only effective in early detection. So this is where testing becomes incredibly critical, because if you're hospitalized, it's too late for that pill. They're not going to be giving you that pill in any event. But this is pre-hospitalization, earliest detection possible. You take that regimen for 5 days. It's a lot less expensive, obviously, than some of the other treatments that are available, or having to put you on a ventilator and have you die and hospitalized. So that pill has been a game changer, so much so that during the trials, the FDA and private sector who were monitoring the trial results actually popped up and said, wow, this is a game changer, a potential game changer. Let's see if we can at least get emergency use authorization for this, get this in the general population to see if we can start to decrease some of the more severe cases of COVID-19. Kevin, thank you so much for popping on to the discussion. Again, folks, we're here to try to educate people based on what the experts are saying. We've never claimed to be experts in our own right, but we rely on the experts. We rely on people with 20 years of infectious disease experience, folks. I'm sorry, Jackie, but your PhD from Facebook just doesn't hold up to a Dr. Nash, a Dr. Klotman, a Dr. What was the other doctor's name that was just speaking, Kevin? A Dr. Sneed, a Dr.
Right. Which the
one in the white.
The one that we just put. That's
there
Klotman.
hasn't been a lot of.
And then we also had Dr. Espinosa. She's
Espinosa, right? She's a children's infectious disease expert. You know, you have to forgive me if I read your comments and I think they're hogwash versus like people who are in the field, who have actually seen COVID patients, thousands of COVID patients in the past 18, 19 months or whatever, since this pandemic has been around. Those people, in my opinion, are the experts on this, you know, as much as you can be an expert in COVID, given that it's a relatively new pandemic around the world. So thank you so much, Kevin. On Thursday's show, what do we got coming up on Thursday? Let's give people a little teaser.
On Thursday's show, we're going to be talking with, sorry, I'm just pulling it up here because my brain is all over the place. Yeah, we're going to talk about the evolution of COVID-19, and also we're going to have Dr. Edwin Michael on, predicting Cayman's future outbreak impact. So he's going to look at the data that's available publicly. We don't have all of it, but he's going to do some modeling. He's done a lot of modeling here in Florida for us, and that's how we make informed decisions based on some of his predictions, which typically is on. It all depends on what policies at the government level is put in, and he could kind of do some predictions based on how many people are vaccinated, what it's currently looking like, if it's expanding or not expanding. So he's going to kind of share some of his views and kind of also, again, look at how COVID, remember the COVID of 2019, 2020 is not the COVID that we're having today. The Delta completely is a different form of the virus that is causing a lot more issues than what we did have initially. But we do have vaccines that's fighting against the Delta. So we're going to kind of look at the evolution of the whole entire thing, how it's changed over time, because people are sometimes looking at old data instead of looking at current data.
All right. So Kevin, that sounds wonderful. Have you had any luck trying to pin down some of our local, because I know you've been having a bit of an issue with that.
We're in the final stages of booking that show. That show is going to be coming up here in a couple of weeks. So we're going to split up in two. We're going to have two shows. How prepared is the Cayman Islands medical system? And so we're going to be talking to private providers and talk to them how they're preparing their private practices, because ultimately, you know, the Cayman Islands Hospital is not going to necessarily be able to take all of the patients. A lot of people got their private doctors that they go to. So I want to know how they are working together, what they're doing to collaborate, how they're preparing for when we have more cases start to be introduced into the community. And then we do have another show separate that's going to be talking directly, how is the HSA preparing? Are they stocking up on monoclonal antibodies, on the other treatments that are available to treat COVID if you were to get it? And we're going to need, we haven't heard a lot of that discussions. I want to know if they're stockpiling stuff. I want to know if they make sure that they have enough support staff, because we know here in the States, we ran out of staff because, well, either a lot of people got sick or we just had so many patients. So how is Cayman preparing for when we do have an increased amount of cases, and what they're doing to make sure that the Health Services Authority is ready for what potentially may come? Just like we prepare for hurricanes, how are we preparing for the world of COVID?
So we have another commenter in WhatsApp says, curious, do these people who are worried about side effects of vaccines take any other medication? Have they read or are they concerned about those side effects? Would anyone have ever thought baby powder could cause cancer? How many still use baby powder despite that situation? Smoking is known to cause cancer. How many still smoke? Or vaping? Vaping is like the new fashionable thing to do. So this person says, shaking my effing head, being selectively concerned about what they put into their bodies. I'm pretty sure they still frequent KFC. Laughing out loud. Another person says, so people prefer to use animal medicine than approved human vaccines. Please make it make sense. And it's so funny about that comment because a lot of these same individuals will say things like, oh, they haven't even tested it on animals. Like, we're the testers. So thank you for Rachel, who shared a link earlier in the discussion about the animal testing that the vaccines actually did undergo as well. Lane, you've not missed the premiere. He's waiting in the back studio. We're going to bring him here in a second. Digo has a question. I actually got this question before, and this is a question for the government, of course. Says CMR, why is administrative and executive officers at John Gray High School still working on school campus when the teachers and students are required to stay off campus? Why the school ground has not yet been sanitized? This was brought to my attention, I think, late on Thursday or Friday. So there's a question that, okay, they've closed the schools for a particular purpose early as it relates to midterm break, but yet the administrative staff seems to have been forgotten about and they are still being forced to show up to work. I don't know if I can answer that, but Kevin, thank you as always for joining us this morning. We look forward to Thursday's show. And then do you have something, is it next week, Wednesday, that you have something else special coming up?
So yeah, I'm not sure if we're going to do that one live. I'll talk to you about how we're going to try to do that. We're still working out some of the logistics of it. But yes, if we have an opportunity to, we'll make sure we let everyone know some of the new special features because, the timing of the show could be a little difficult for some people. So we want to make sure that we work with their schedules and stuff as well. But yeah, just keep on paying attention to the different things that we're pushing out.
Awesome. Thanks, Kev. Appreciate it.
No problem. Have a great day, everyone.
All righty. So Anne Smith says, Maria, that has been refuted. Apparently, India has decided that it's not effective and they're no longer using that method. So here's the thing. You do have to be careful. Everybody wants to point to, well, this country is doing this and it's working. And that was like 6 months ago. And they've since said, oops, actually it doesn't work. So we've stopped using it. You've got to make sure that as much as possible, your information is current. So that's important. And it's accurate. So I saw Jonathan's comment about the caskets. He said, maybe people are confused about the fact that FEMA ordered thousands of caskets 13 years ago. And there's an actual story up on YouTube about that. So people are really mixing themselves up and talking about stuff to try to make these arguments somehow valid with data that isn't actually, number one, sometimes it doesn't exist, or number two, it's outdated information, it just isn't accurate, et cetera, et cetera. So even, for example, the case with Israel, someone asked a question last night about all these people dying in Israel, but yet Israel has had like a 60% decrease in, hospitalizations over the past 3 weeks. So make sure that when you come to the program and you say something that is actually real-time factual information, I think that would really, really be important. So there is the one question that remains out there. A lot of people are asking, and they would like for Dr. T, and maybe Kevin can follow up on this. They would like for Dr. T to indicate whether or not he actually, has any financial or pecuniary interest in the Sinopharm vaccine, because there's been this theory floating around again. Speculation, not confirmation. There is this theory floating around that indeed maybe he's trying to bring it in for his own patients to get, and again, because he likes that vaccine, whatever. And so there's a monetary element to what is, pushing his support of that vaccine. So Magdalene says the admin staff do not get the usual midterm breaks. They're like regulate. I meant maybe that's supposed to be regular government staff. But I think the point is, in a situation where the school is being closed for a purpose of trying to get the infections under control, wouldn't in those circumstances the admin staff be subject to that break as well? I don't know. So Sanjita, thank you so much, says, let's get the answer to what Kevin asked. What's the availability of monoclonal antibodies and nursing staff? And we do need scientifically based COVID preparedness. Thank you, my dear. We hope to have an answer for that in due course. All right, folks, so let us shift gears just a little bit here. Still going to be talking about vaccines, but now we're going to move the conversation to vaccine mandates. So as you guys know, this was a hot button topic. I must say that ironically, you know, this government has had a very challenging time. They've obviously come in at a time when the biggest challenge happens to be COVID. And, you know, I honestly, I wouldn't want that job for anything in the world, quite frankly. They could keep that job. So there's a lot of difficulties that come with it. And someone from the funeral home business says, would it help if we actually showed an invoice that it was only 10 caskets that were ordered? And they went on to say, if 80% of the people get vaccinated and it kills them, I'll need more than 10. Being very tongue-in-cheek that just hasn't happened. All right, folks. Thank you, Miss Darlene. It says a new and very interesting study released over here yesterday about the benefits of pregnant women taking the jab. So we'll have a look at that data. Darlene, if you have the link, send it to us and we will definitely share that. So let's get ready to speak to the Honorable Wayne Panton. All right, folks, so welcome back. It is Impact Wednesdays, where we have members of the PACT government come onto the program and they tell us a little bit about what they have been doing. Sometimes the focus is really at the constituency level. So you guys remember now this is week number 3 for Impact Wednesdays. So last week we had the Honorable Minister of Health and Wellness, Sabrina Turner. The week before that we had MP for West Bay Central, Catherine Wilkes, and they've been very, very busy. They both shared quite a bit about what they have been doing specific to their constituencies, their constituency office, and programs and initiatives that they've been undertaking. Now, of course, the Premier wears many hats, so he is the MP for Newlands, but today's discussion will not really be focused on what he's doing in his constituency, although I'm sure he'll come back and tell us about that as well. But we wanted to have him on the program too, because I've been fielding questions left, right, and center. I know y'all think my number is 411, and you just call me for information. If I can give you accurate information, I'm always willing to help. But sometimes I think we need to break it down and get it straight from the horse's mouth. And especially when it comes to law, we know that the Premier is a retired attorney, partner at a former law firm for probably 20 plus years. And so he has a wealth of experience at understanding legislation, the drafting of legislation, and really we want him to try to break down the vaccine mandate. Who needs to get vaccinated? So get your questions ready, folks. Hello, Ms. Charlene. And she's saying good morning already to the Honorable Premier. Let's bring him in now. Good morning, Premier Wayne Panton. How are you?
Good morning, Sandra. Doing fine. Good morning to all of the wonderful people of our incredible Cayman Islands. Yeah, doing okay. Doing okay.
Good. Awesome.
Lots of work, busy. Obviously, lots of things to try to make sure that we have organized, but lots going on.
Yes, absolutely. Well, you look good and refreshed anyway this morning. So
Well, you know what to say about looks sometimes. Be deceiving.
In the eye of the beholder. So I love your Cayman flag in the background. As you can see, I've always got mine representing as well. So
yeah, one of my staff members decided to put it there to cover up most of the whiteboard, so it shows all of the stuff and all of the mapping and different issues and stuff.
yes,
yeah, it makes a good backdrop.
So Kari and Charlene already saying good morning to you. So let's dive right into this. So we know now that the government has passed several pieces of legislation. So first of all, can you give us the name of the relevant legislation as it relates to the vaccine mandates? And then if we can delve into, what changes are going to come as a result of that.
Well, I mean, it's so the two bills were the Immigration Transition Amendment Bill. And there was a companion piece, which was the Customs and Border Control Amendment Bill. It was just originally all the provisions around provisions which related to or which impacted people from an immigration perspective were in one piece of legislation. But with the creation of Customs and Border Protection in the last year and a half, whatever it was, maybe 2 years now, I can't remember. That separated off certain functions. So we ended up having the Immigration Transition Amendment Bill, which was to deal quite broadly with the mandates in relation to work permit grants and renewals, and a few other areas, including the impacts in relation to people who are permanent residents, and then the other aspect, the Customs and Border Control Bill, contains some other provisions relating to things like student visas and those types of things that were a little bit broader and were covered by that legislation and not primarily the immigration transition legislation. Sorry, got to drink a bit of water here.
All right, so we've got the bill. I'm just trying to see if I can actually pull it up here. It should be in the Gov website. So let's just go through it, right?
The thing about this is, first of all, let me say it doesn't have an impact on Caymanians. One of the things, the original bills that we did really went across a broad spectrum because the view was that if you're going to have vaccine mandates in those types of circumstances, it should be as broad as possible. But I think on reflection and after discussion with others, and including some of the comments from the opposition, I think the view was that we would narrow it in scope a bit to eliminate the impact in relation to people who were married to Caymanians, those who had the employment rights certificates and those types of things. So we have limited it specifically to work permit grants and renewals, and transitions in relation to permanent residency, and not in relation to people who are spouses of Caymanians or children of Caymanians.
So there's a lot of, immediately after the bills are passed in the Legislative Assembly, I did receive a number of queries about, who exactly it was going to apply to. There's so many different sort of situations that present themselves when something like this comes up. So here's an example that was a bit unusual. So there was a guy who was married to Caymanian. She has since died. And so, technically he's obviously still not married to her. And I can't remember if if his RERC would have fallen away even before she died, but he does have a Caymanian child. So the person's like, well, would he be required to be vaccinated? And the easiest thing for me, and you can tell me if this is an easy litmus test for the average person, is I said, well, does he require a work permit? Is that an easy way to kind of figure out with all these different situations if someone would actually fall under the vaccine mandate? But not everybody, because I mean, there's contracted workers with government who we know eventually will fall under this as well. There'll be separate legislation to handle that.
Right, and that's within the purview of the civil service. The deputy governor and the governor will be addressing that separately. But I think what would be useful is if we could do a list, which I will give you. I'll get somebody to do a list of all the various scenarios that we anticipate that will be relevant to this legislation, so that you can actually share that with those on your show. Unfortunately, this morning, as you know, I've come on a bit late, and I've got a meeting waiting on me now, which I'm happy to make them wait for a while. But what I would like to do is give you a list where we anticipate all the different scenarios, and then you can share that and put that up on your site, and people. So it's like a frequently asked questions approach, and a list of different scenarios where people can find the answers.
So we have someone who has kindly shared the link. So the first one, the Customs and Border Control Amendment Bill 2021, dated the 23rd of September. Very short, it's only 11 pages. And basically this has a memorandum of objectives and reasons for the bill. So the Principal Act, it kind of goes into some details in terms of that. And then it has amendment of Section 2 of the Customs and Border Control 2021 revision. And then it talks about interpretation. And then it inserts some new sections under Clause 3, and then amendment of Section 133 as it relates to the general regulations. So just give us a quick overview of what this particular bill was about.
Well, as I said, this particular one related, I think, more specifically to circumstances where there were, things like student visas, and I think there were a few other minor areas. To be honest, what I don't have in front of me right now is unfortunately, I have the original bills, and I don't have the version with the amendments. So let's do this, Sandra.
Yes.
Let me get that list for you, and I will commit to you that I'll come back on perhaps later this week, and we can go through that once we've had the list, and we can have a discussion then. Unfortunately, I am a little bit short on time this morning. I was hoping to make up the time while we were driving, but I know that was not the most ideal circumstances with the shadows and stuff and the road noise. But I wanted to say generally that this was, not something that the government took very lightly. This is a decision that we arrived at because we feel that we have to do absolutely everything we can to make sure that Cayman has the best possible chance of reopening safely and staying open. We are going to have people who get infected. We are going to have people who get sick. We have been having that already. We've had community outbreak now. There's a lot of speculation about how it happened. We still do not have the answers in relation to that. But it seems extremely likely that it related less to a defect in the system and the envelope that we created to protect us than people reaching a point where they become complacent and they were just not interested in complying anymore. And that is the kind of fatigue that people have been talking about. You know, that is not just occurring in Cayman, but other places in the world. There is this degree of fatigue with you know, with difficult provisions that are regarded as inconvenient. Unfortunately, you know, that's something that we're going to have to learn to live with. We're going to have to help to educate people that public health protocols will have to remain in place. We can try to make adjustments to them, but we will have to live with some of that. It is not going to be the end of the world for us. I think we can do it successfully. But a very, very key part of that has been the desire to maximize the level of vaccination in the country. And I can tell you, if you look, even as scary as it is for people, if you look at what's been happening in terms of our community outbreak, we have far less adults who are coming up positive, despite all the surveillance that we're doing through across frontline workers, the same surveillance that we've been doing for months. We're not seeing any significant level of community spread outside of what's happening largely around the schools, largely around our children. And of course, our children are the ones that are primarily, is that body of people that are primarily unvaccinated. And that is, I think, indicative of the fact that, you know, the vaccines do work. Are they 100% in terms of not of blocking infection? No. Do they help? Absolutely. And I think what we have demonstrated in terms of our experience so far has been just that. And that is, you know, one of the driving reasons why we need to maximize our level of vaccination. And of course, it's going to be difficult for us to mandate vaccinations in general across the board. But I think as a country, we have the right, and constitutionally, we have the ability to say, while we're not saying to people, we're going to hold you down and stick something in your arm, as the opposition may have been trying to convey in their discussions on these bills. We are saying to people, if you want to stay here and be a part of our community, we welcome you, as we've always done. But we need to make sure that people are vaccinated so that they can help to provide the level of protection. We have many Caymanians who are vaccinated. Our vaccination rate is very high, but there is a difficulty in just mandating vaccinations across the board for everybody, and we are putting in place conditions with this legislation which says we welcome you here, but these are the conditions and these are the terms in which we welcome you being a part of our country, a part of our society. And it doesn't change the way Caymanians behave to others. We're always kind and open and warm people. But of course, we have had some blowback from some of these, and I don't know the agenda. We have some fairly anonymous looking sites being created by people with these perhaps pseudonyms, and I'm referring to the Steve person who is either made up or a pseudonym for a particular person. Those types of things don't help at all. They help to create disharmony, disunity. But I think that this is a minor thing. I think we will in time, in a short period of time, this type of issue will go away.
Can we entertain just a few questions from the audience? I know that your time is limited, but one person is asking, do we have any information on the percentage of work permit holders that are actually vaccinated? Is that data that we have?
That was a question that was discussed yesterday. Actually, we do know that there are more and more work permit holders who are now getting vaccinated. The answer to the specific answer to the question is we don't have, and the information is going to be available. I'm told, which shows the breakdown between Caymanians versus non-Caymanians. Now, I don't know. I don't know to what extent we'd have to cross-check against immigration records then to see which of those are work permit holders versus people who are resident on another basis.
Okay.
That information specifically
Something we
has not been obtained yet. And we anticipate having that in the next few days, I think.
Right. So we also have Charlene and Carolina asking essentially the same question, that it looks like the FDA is very, very close to approving the vaccination for 5 to 11-year-olds. And they're wondering when and if that happens, will Cayman follow suit, or will we wait until the UK has given approval for that age group?
Well, the US do seem to be, well, all indications are that they are relatively close in making a recommendation for use on for authorization on an emergency use basis. Now, what we are not sure about is to what extent the UK regulatory authority will adopt that as quickly. I think anyone who's been following this issue for some time will know that the UK have been having a number of discussions around the ethical and moral implications of basically diverting vaccines to young people who, in their view, have a far greater resiliency to COVID than adults. And they're not talking about within the context of their own country. I think they're looking at it from a global perspective and saying, we should utilize what resources we have for in terms of vaccine supply to help other countries that don't have access. I am on calls with CARICOM leaders around the Caribbean, and they're still struggling to get access to vaccine supplies. Now, many of those countries do have issues, as we do here, with people who are vaccine hesitant or people who are anti-vaxxers and who seem intent on spreading disinformation and confusing people about the benefits of vaccinations. But a major problem that they have is they can't even get a consistent supply. And when they do, it's a combination of things. We have been extremely lucky to have the relationship with the UK, and the UK providing us with this supply of the Pfizer vaccine, which is one of the top 2 best vaccines at this point anyway. There may be others that will be developed which are better. There may be others which are developed which are more effective against, for example, the Delta variant. But what we have now is certainly one of the absolute best. So we get it for free from the UK, thankfully. And so I think where that leaves us is that we, in terms of their decision as to whether to provide the supply to us, we have to wait for them to tell us that they're okay with this rollout for young people. Now, if there is a move by the FDA to grant this emergency authorization use, and it isn't followed up by the UK, can Cayman take a different approach and for example, access its own supply somewhere else? That is technically a possibility, I think. But practically speaking, as I said earlier, there is a significant problem with access to supply of vaccine, and we have been the beneficiary of the relationship with the UK, where they have given us this very significant supply, and now they've also, as you know, committed to providing us a supply for the boosters, which people have started to take up in significant numbers now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the difficulty comes in. If the UK don't follow the FDA's ultimate approval, it puts us in a position where we may not be able to, even if we wanted to, we may not be able to get easy access to a supply which we could utilize to inoculate those between 5 and 11 without the UK's support and approval for that. But obviously that is, we're very much hoping that will be the case. We will be able to get that kind of support and authorization. And one of the things is, the UK's position is different from us. We have had very little COVID, relatively speaking. The UK has had a significant amount. So they've had lots of opportunity where some degree of natural immunity could build up. And by that, I'm not suggesting that natural immunity is better than immunity provided by vaccination. It's just the fact that some immunity is better than none, and they will have had that opportunity because they've had so much COVID. We just haven't, and so our position to them would be that we are not in the same position as you are, and we think if there is an approval for use on an emergency use basis for those children that are between 5 and 11, we would like to have that option available to us so that people can decide, our people can decide for themselves whether they want to do it. And I suspect we do have a lot of people who would be interested in doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no question, as you have done a great job, and even just the discussion this morning between you and Kevin, and I certainly want to thank both of you for the incredible work that you've been doing around this issue and trying to bring to light the truth and the facts, and trying to break through a lot of the misinformation that it's astounding that people. I'm constantly astounded at the people who actually who have these views that and it's interesting to me to try to figure out what their motivation is, what drives them to reach the conclusions they do. But we want to get in a position where as many people are vaccinated as possible, and that includes our children to the extent that is possible. This is going to be very, very key for us. I think, as I said, our experience has been so far good. We've not had any people that were significantly sick. We did have some babies, a 10-month-old and an 11-month-old that were admitted because they were suffering from gastrointestinal issues, and they were in danger of having dehydration issues. And I can tell you, Sandra, that the evening that I got the message that the 10-month-old baby had been admitted, I sat in my chair and the tears flowed, because that is a weak spot, I think, for all of us. For all of us, that's why we are so desperate to try to do everything we can to give us the best possible chance to limit the amount of spread that happens in our community. I want to say just very quickly, because I do have to go, but I want to say very quickly, I know that people are upset. I know that people find in this process where we are isolating those that are contacts of those that are positives. I know people find it incredibly frustrating, and I know it is personally difficult. It is financially difficult, and we're talking to employers, and we're trying to work through solutions, and we're helping people where we can to help provide groceries to them and try to address the situation and make it as less inconvenient as possible. But the reason we're doing that right now is because we're trying to limit the spread, right? If we didn't do that, if we didn't employ those sort of tactics, we could have far greater spread going on, and we do need to try to limit it. The really good news, which I've talked about a couple of times, is we are going to be shifting from this approach of isolation and testing after the 14 days to particularly where families are vaccinated, but generally otherwise as well, where you're not the quarantine family, but you're just isolated because of potential exposure. We're going to be shifting over to the use of lateral flow tests so that we can then basically every day people would just, or every other day people would do a lateral flow test to check to see what their status is if they've been tested negative initially. And then it's only when they come up as positive, if they do, on the lateral flow test, that we'll then have that confirmed by a PCR test. And then the quarantine situation, as usual, arises. But we cannot have a situation, we can't continue to have a situation where we have hundreds of people who are in isolation because of their potential contacts. And that is, we're working on that this week. We're getting significant supplies in of the lateral flow test this week, and we're going to be making the announcement in terms of the transition to that, so that it will make us a significant difference in the lives of people.
Okay, just a few comments. Sanjita and Jackie are both saying that it seems, well, Sanjita says it seems hypocritical to not have travel Cayman, civil servant workers, teachers, frontline service providers, and healthcare providers be vaccinated in order to protect the public and our children. We're getting our children at great risk by not getting those providers vaccinated. Although Jackie, I'm a little bit confused by Jackie's point, but Jackie, I don't think is pro-vaccine, but at the same time, she says that yes, it seems to be discrimination in the other direction against foreign workers. So just to be clear, by the way, in terms as it relates to healthcare workers, the HSA has put their own policy in place. Obviously, this isn't for private organizations, but I'd be interested to know if Health City has a policy, if Doctors Hospital has a policy, but definitely the HSA, which is the largest facility and government-owned, does have an existing policy in place where upon renewal of your contract, you have to get vaccinated. And as of now, some 85%, maybe it's gone up in recent weeks, of their employees already have been vaccinated as well. Right. So I think that that's important information, Sanjita. But point taken, especially when it relates to teachers. And, this is where parents, I think, need to be asking, especially if you're in a private school, what's the policy and what percentage of teachers and other staff are actually vaccinated. Now, there has been a very peculiar thing. It seems like most of the vaccinations have actually happened across government schools. And so some people are asking, why is that the case? Is it the sheer number of students that are in that environment? Is it because there's no social distancing in the classrooms because of restrictions just in the physical space that's available? Any thoughts, Premier, on why? I mean, we've had a few private schools as well, but it seems like it's been by and large the public schools that have had.
You're talking about the infections.
Yes.
Right. I think it is a function of numbers. I think it's also possibly a function of demographics. I mean, let's be honest about it. There are people who typically go to private schools who are in, by virtue of having greater levels of income within the family. For example, they have a different approach. They have the ability to have their children organized in a way and perhaps have less exposure, whereas the typical public schools are bigger, and there's a lot more mixing. The children tend to spend more time in community engagement, which is actually, ironically, that's a very positive thing, right? But in this scenario where you're talking about a public health risk, it does create much more opportunities for problems. So, if we look at the Georgetown primary school situation, the kids that go to Georgetown primary school tend to mix a lot, both at school as well as out of school. They tend to spend more time in the communities outside and in larger groups. So I think it is a function of the numbers, but it's also, I think, a function possibly of just the implications of different demographics, which is an unfortunate thing. But as I said, there are aspects of it that are positive in terms of community building, but they're negative in terms of the potential for further exposure to infection.
And Magdalene is asking the question whether private schools are actually being tested as much as government schools. I think because of the outbreaks, Magdalene, in the government schools, and obviously they were doing a much broader degree of testing. So that's also a fair point, that maybe some of those institutions haven't yet had a reason to test across year groups and stuff like that as well. Premier, thank you so much for coming on. Can we try to maybe reschedule you for Friday, if possible?
Yeah, I think let me see what I can work on in respect to that. But let me just say, in relation to testing, this is where the lateral flow tests really become a game changer for us, because we have PCR testing. We get reports every day. I mean, there was a report this morning. There was 618 PCR tests done overnight, or since the last report yesterday. Which is a lot. Sometimes it's 1,200. We don't have multiple machines that are able to run all these PCR tests. So if we can switch to lateral flow tests, which will help us to very quickly identify those that are potentially positive, and the lateral flow tests have become better and better, and they are. They're becoming more accurate. But if it can give us an idea of somebody that may be positive, and then we utilize that PCR test to confirm it, that gives us a much broader range of testing throughout, both whether it's our families, whether it's at work. I mean, for example, government is going to be doing this in schools. We'll be doing it at the government building. I'll be taking a lateral flow test probably twice a week. We had a demonstration yesterday. It's nowhere near the experience that people may have had. I've never had a PCR test myself. I've been vaccinated since March, but the approach to it is very simple, and it can give us a result within 15 minutes, and we can either decide that we're good and we can go along about our business, or this is it indicates a possible positive and we should go and get checked. That will open up a broad range of surveillance testing for us that we have not had implemented hitherto. So we should be reducing the pressure then on the well, certainly not in, perhaps it's not correct to say reducing the pressure, but we certainly won't be, we certainly will be able to increase very significantly our level of surveillance testing, while not continuing to, put the pressure on that incredible team of Caymanians at HSA who are doing the PCR testing.
So big shout out to Al Ray. He has shared an article with The Guardian. We're going to have a look at this. He's saying that there's been calls for an inquiry as negative COVID PCR tests follow a positive lateral flow test. Now listen, folks, if you were listening to the program last night, Dr. Nash did say that they're not as reliable. So there's a trade-off. So ease of use versus reliability, you're looking at probably a 20% margin of error. And of course, that's important to know going into this. So there are other people who are lauding this as the golden, the holy grail. That isn't the situation.
Well, I mean,
it's another tool.
That article there suggested that I think that those lateral flow tests may indicate positives or false positives. I don't mind that so much.
Right. You'd rather have a false positive than the other way around.
That you have
Yes.
concerns about. So in terms of the tests that we have authorized, we have tried to maintain those that have a very high level of sensitivity and specificity, and therefore accuracy. So a greater degree of accuracy. Are they going to be? They're nowhere near the accuracy of a PCR test, obviously, but it gives us a tool that we can utilize to minimize the impact on the entire country and significantly improve our level of surveillance about identifying people that are potentially positive.
Okay. All right, folks. Thank you so much, Premier. We've got other highlights coming up here in a second. I know we're actually out of time, but we'll go over a little bit over time. Right now, the coronavirus NHS COVID Pass app has crashed, leaving UK travelers unable to board flights. So if you're traveling in the UK today, you're definitely going to have an issue with that technology. And we also see that yesterday it was reported in the New York Times that the UK has really fumbled the pandemic response, costing thousands of lives, because a new parliamentary report, a 151-page report, is out that is highly, highly critical of the UK government's failure to carry out widespread testing, which we talked about from last year, as you guys remember, about how the UK was really not doing the best job in the world. They failed to carry out widespread testing. They failed to swiftly impose lockdowns and other restrictions. And basically, this amounted to a pursuit of herd immunity by infection, which, as we can see, is not the way to go. And they're saying that as a result of that, a lot of people have lost their lives. So I'm going to share this 151-page document in the comment section. Folks, you never have to take our word for anything. Go and read it for yourselves. What the experts are saying, what the research is saying, what these findings are saying. The link is there now. Have a look at that highly critical report of the UK's response. Even now, people are saying that this, they've removed the red, what is it? The traffic light system. They've kind of thrown their borders open. And
they have a stoplight now.
They have a green light. Go. Everybody just goes and run into each other. But Premier, thank you so much. We have other questions for you. I did see Remy asking about the stipend. Is there any anticipation of reopening applications for the stipend? Maybe that's a question for the Minister of Tourism. But do you have any idea if there will be other people who can potentially apply for that? I think at this point, if somebody missed it, they've missed like 5 times to apply for it. But seems like there might still be some people.
I think I believe they're still finalizing some of the most recent applicants. But to be honest, if we are moving towards reopening fairly quickly, then I think the need for stipends will be will reduce significantly. We have basically put in place provisions for the support for families if they are in quarantine. Actually, initially it was also on the basis that families would need support who are in isolation. I think basically under the employment rules, there are businesses that were saying to their employees, we're not going to pay you, you're on your own if you have to isolate, which is unfortunate, but to some extent, you can understand small businesses that are under pressure as well. So we're putting in place a mechanism through which we can assist it with a stipend-like regime in those circumstances. But with the lateral flow tests and being able to reduce the numbers of people in isolation, that's going to go down as well. At this point, we have not had any discussion about reopening the stipend process. As I said, I think they're still finalizing some of the last applicants, and they would obviously get some retrospective benefit. But I think the number that was it was increased by was about just less than 500 people on the last time, and that would have been about the fifth time I think it was sort of reopened. So people have had lots and lots of opportunity to apply for these things, and in some cases, people are not being approved after the committee has done the thorough review. And I understand that people sometimes will be upset by those decisions, but we're trying to ensure that there's a process around it. We're trying to ensure that the politicians are not involved, that it is an independent process, so that it can be free of any accusations or allegations about improper political influence.
Mm-hmm.
So, these are people trying to do their best and trying to do their work on behalf of the people of the country, and supporting the people that really need the help. Sandra, I want to say thank you again. Thank you for the incredible work that you continue to do across a broad spectrum, but specifically in relation to this issue of public health and vaccinations. And I want to thank Kevin in particular as well, who has taken this on himself to as a personal issue that he wants to to try to make sure that as much people in Cayman are aware of the facts and truth as possible. So I applaud both of you, and I look forward to being able to come back on.
Thank you so much.
Go into some more details with you. I will share that document with you, as I said, with the list, and then we can
dig into a little bit more. So I know that some additional questions were coming in, folks, but in the interest of time, the Premier has already gone into overtime. He has indicated meeting.
I see the own it thing. What is that?
I'm not sure. I think people are commenting with each other, so I don't know that refers to.
All right.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to follow the chain, but
I want to say to the country, have a wonderful, wonderful Wednesday, and we're all in this together, and we're going to get through this, and we are trying to make the best decisions going forward to ensure that the country as a whole comes through this. And I believe with our dedication and our commitment to each other and being kind and helpful to each other and understanding, we can all do this together. Cayman can be that success story that it has always been from going into the future. So thank you, and look forward to speaking to you, Sandra, and everyone else.
Hopefully on Friday. Okay, thank you so much. We appreciate it. All right, folks. So I do see some of your additional questions coming in, and some of them I can address without an issue. Zelda, yours in particular is very, very easy to address. That's not something that we need the Premier to address. And since it's now some 10 months kind of out of date in terms of news, we have a historical indication of exactly what was going on. Just a quick note for those of you who are concerned about the school exit schedule that has just been posted on the website, folks. So if you need to know where to go get tested, how to go get tested, if you're one of the schools that was impacted by the recent outbreak, let me just share the link here in relation to that. And there it is. And you can now click to see the exact schedule that has been set by the HSA. So some of your other questions, I think when the Premier is back on Friday, you can re-ask those questions. Digo, your question about the administrative staff, being that Mr. France Manderson is actually head of the civil service, we will send that query through directly to Mr. France Manderson, because I think he's the best person to answer that question for you. So the political arm, as you guys know, do not get involved in the administrative handling of civil servants, because of course that would be a conflict of interest. And we've seen some political people in the past who've dabbled in that, and they're really not supposed to, because the country ends up paying millions of dollars to those individuals. So we'll ask the correct person, the head of the civil service. That is his remit and his responsibility. So we'll definitely ask him that. Zelda, to answer your question, so let me just remind you all of exactly how this happened. so that you have a good idea. So back in, let me just tell you exactly when it was. We actually broke the story on this, so this is why I can answer this question for you. So Zelda, back in January, let me just pull up the website here. We definitely had that happening. CMR divulged that people were coming here off the plane and they were getting vaccinated when they were just here visiting. How many people did that? We don't know. Let me just see if I can get the original. Let me just see if I can find the original article on this. But yeah, that was definitely back in January. There was an article on the 13th. I kind of think it was the day before that, right? So let me just pull this up for your benefit. This is a very, very easy one, like I said, to answer. So the government became aware of this situation because CMR highlighted it back on January the 12th. So here's a January 13th article. This is a message from the governor saying that people, asking people to be patient in that first go round of the vaccine, because remember, we'd just gotten them. And at that point, over 3,000 people had already gotten their first dose of the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine. However, let me click on this little link right here. That's how you know it's a hyperlink. On the 13th, well, we printed it the same day, basically. Concerns mount that some abuse vaccination program, and this is where we highlighted, because we saw that this was happening, the fact that people were actually abusing the vaccination campaign to come in. Because listen, I know a lot of people are like, oh, they don't want to get vaccinated now, especially in the early days when there was not an ample supply of available vaccines. Folks, people were desperate to get vaccinated. Even Americans, and they were coming here in private jets and, finding a reason to come in. And that reason to come in meant that they could actually get vaccinated easier, stand in a line for 10, 15 minutes, or maybe no line at all, depending on what particular day it was. And yes, they were taking full advantage of that situation. If the system allows them to take advantage of it, then I suppose from their perspective, they're probably thinking, why not, right? Folks, they did it and they got vaccinated. And as soon as we highlighted precisely what was going on in this article, within very short order, the gap was closed. So we heard the students, attorneys, restaurant workers, and so on were taking advantage of the easy accessibility of the vaccine at the HSA. Some claim without any special need. So even at this point, this wasn't yet open to everyone getting vaccinated. So there were still restrictions. The government was saying, listen, let's get the most vulnerable individuals vaccinated first. And so there were people who were skipping ahead of the line in the sense that they did not fall into that category. And despite not falling into that category, they were still jumping on the bandwagon and saying, oh, let's rush and go get vaccinated, to the detriment potentially of other people who were falling into the, who were falling into the need category. They needed to get vaccinated because of pre-existing health risk, because of their age and other comorbidities that made it very, very challenging and difficult for them if they became infected. So that definitely happened. We highlighted it. We talked about it. We talked about it in this program. So I'm not sure if you missed that, but we did go into it in immense detail, Zelda. And, we'd received complaints from different people. They weren't even checking IDs at that point, Zelda. So all of that we are very, very much aware of. I heard that there were some children who at that point would not have yet been authorized to get the vaccine. They likewise were just walking in line, 15 years old, no parental authorization yet, and they were getting vaccinated. So as a result of this article, they tightened the ship, and they were then starting to require IDs and other things that prove that you were a resident on island. So there's a follow-up article I'm trying to remember. It probably would have been the day after, where they actually put those protocols in place. So that has been addressed as of mid-January. That issue was actually addressed. So Kari says tourists were still getting vaccinated during Easter last year as well. Well, the difficulty, Kari, is how do you define a resident? You know, a nurse at the HSA isn't going to argue with you if you're a resident or not. If the person had, and remember now, we weren't having tourists come in at that time. We were having people come in who had some sort of a connection to the island, unless they were giving special authorization, like people who were filming and that sort of thing. But everybody else was coming in who owned property, for example, right? So there's a young lady, for example, remember she went viral on Instagram, posting up some foolishness or whatever. She was coming to visit her stepdad because her stepdad is a resident of the Cayman Islands and owns property and whatever. So under that situation, she could come in as a visitor and stay for quite an amount of time, really. So do you say to her, oh, well, your parent owns a home here, so by extension, you know, have a benefit there. Do you not then count as a resident? A resident doesn't have to be someone who is a Caymanian, carrying a Caymanian passport, and it certainly doesn't have to be someone who is full-time either. So, you know, I think that those are some of the things to take into consideration. But I think that that has been largely resolved. The interesting thing about it, Zelda, is here we have in this jurisdiction, as the Premier just pointed out, the ability to get this vaccine relatively easily. And so many people here have not appreciated that there are people around the world who would give a limb, who would travel halfway around the world to be able to get access to this life-saving vaccine. And there are people here who have the opportunity to take it who are refusing to take it. We're like, oh no, I don't want that, until the borders open. And then I think the situation again will change. So yes. And someone else says that I'm a frontliner. This is a WhatsApp message that says I'm a frontliner that found myself queuing behind a couple healthy looking lawyers. Heard about that as well. So yes. But listen, those healthy looking lawyers, they were like, I'm not taking any chances. So people will always find a way, folks, to abuse the system, just like the stipend system. We understand that there are people who are applying for that and getting funds, getting money, who actually were not even tourist workers, because the previous government didn't really put a whole lot of checks and balances and protocol in place. Yikes. So were people taking advantage of it? Yes, they were. Quite unfortunate at that. But there you have it, folks. I think that Drago, your question has been forwarded to the Premier, the head of the civil service, Mr. Franz Manderson. He's going to look into this. So we'll have an update for you in some form or another. Just stay tuned to the social media platforms. Oh gosh, my poor elbow's killing me today after I hit it this morning. So we got you covered there. Just trying to see if there's any other questions that I can comment on. Jackie's going back and forth with no one and some other people. Okay. Nicholas says expat works there too. Works where? So just to be clear, contracted workers with government will, as soon as they change the respective law for public servants, they will also fall under the new CBC controls in terms of vaccination. So just because you work for government as a contracted worker does not mean that you will not be subject to vaccination. I honestly think, and this is certainly a political question that we can ask, but I honestly think that the government is starting first with the one group that is very transient in and out of this country, and that will cause your numbers to fluctuate significantly in terms of the importation of workers. They're starting with that group. Will this vaccine eventually be mandated? You want my hard, cold truth opinion? Absolutely yes. It's going to be mandated all over the world. The UK, the USA has mandates all over the place already. New York, California. Teachers are coming up next. Healthcare workers have already been mandated in New York. They've largely fallen in line. It's going to be like any other vaccine that we've been taking our entire lives. All of you have taken vaccines for the most part, and you're here because of the safety of vaccines, generally speaking. And so it will be mandated. You want to travel? You know, those of you who are quipping and going on about, oh, I'm not going to take a vaccine, then you will never travel from where you are right now. You know, I know someone who is a Caymanian, but they have a home in the US, and they're back and forth quite a bit. They're refusing to take it. They just left the jurisdiction, and now they're Miami. Their wife is here. Their mother's here. Their family and cousins and friends are here. Will that person sit in Miami forever and never be vaccinated? Well, time will tell. I will soon update you on that situation. I think that more and more restrictions will be put in place in terms of who can travel, who can even enter facilities, restaurants in the States, folks. You are not going into a lot of restaurants in the US if you are not vaccinated. And that is what it is. You know, take it or leave it. They don't care. If you can't show them proof of vaccination, you're not going to enter even a place to dine. So it will come to head where you literally are going to be stuck at home with your family of unvaccinated family, and that's it. You won't be able to go to a restaurant. You can't go to museums and theaters and other things. You definitely will not be traveling. And if you're happy with that, then that's your choice. That's where the choice comes in. There will be doctors who will say, you can't come into my medical facility without being vaccinated. I will not treat you. I will not take you as a patient unless you're vaccinated. School teachers are going to get the ultimatum. You can't teach other people's children. Teach your own at a stay-at-home program or homeschooling or whatever. But the option to actually, you know, interact with other people's children is going to be limited if you refuse to get vaccinated. So Sanjita says, you're right. The vaccine is the only way to get out of this pandemic. Jonathan says, you see me, Sandy. If they're going to use that barrel for the raffle, tell them to fix that little door so that barrel and spin the barrel on that barrel and spin the barrel. Don't simply give it a shake and draw the card. Jonathan, we're actually going to get them on to explain to you how it's going to work. So it's not working with a barrel system at all, I don't think. It's going to be a random selection of the number, but we do want to reach out to both the HSA and the DMS organization to give you the details, because I think the devil is in the details. I know a lot of you want to make sure. That's $100,000. That is six figures, folks. Most of us don't make $100,000 in a year, right? So a lot of people are like, listen, that's good money. That could pay down a mortgage. That could potentially buy you a home in certain areas. You know, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of dough. I know that the DMS organization is keen to make sure that there are proper protocols, because half of it the HSA will be doing, and the other half of it, you know, others will be doing. So the DMS organization wants to make sure that it's above reproach, so no one can question, well, did the HSA people who pick a number pick their friends, or, you know, so there has to be complete transparency on how this is going to work. So we'll invite them all in the program, Jonathan, and talk about it. And Jonathan, if you're the lucky winner, at least take me out to dinner. I'm happy to wear my mask, but treat me to a little dinner. So Jackie says there's no vaccine requirements in my state or any surrounding my state for public places like restaurants. Well, it's only a matter of time. You can bet the farm on that. I don't know what state you're in, but it is going to be across the U.S. It's starting with a lot of the larger states, and we can certainly, again, we've talked about vaccine mandates all over the world. But let's see. It's rolling out, folks. So New York, 18 hours ago. It's doing more. Let's see. U.S. will open borders with Canada and Mexico to vaccinated travelers. So again, the U.S. is starting to open some of its borders. That's in the New York Times 8 hours ago. Florida has an employee vaccine requirement for some. So yeah, I mean, these things are coming one way or the other. So there's a list from September the 15th and Reuters.com, U.S. state vaccine mandates in schools. And they have a whole list. Let me show this to you all. It's only a matter of time. I mean, people who think this is going away are very, so here's a list of vaccines mandated for children. Oh, these are other vaccines. My apologies. That's across the U.S. But, you know, it's coming for other schools as well. So Los Angeles County ordered COVID-19 vaccines for all students ages 12 and over. They have the largest school district so far to take that dramatic step. So it's simply just a matter of time is the bottom line. Anybody who doesn't believe that is not well versed in reality. Vaccine mandates to travel to the US. So there's some people overseas who want to come to Cayman. We don't yet have a vaccine mandate for travelers because our borders are technically still closed. However, if you come this way and then you want to get back home, you can't get back into the US without being vaccinated. Vaccine shots now required to eat in cafes in France, to see a Broadway show in New York, and soon to fly commercially in Canada. This is the way forward, folks. And so the tourism industry, you should know, tourism, business travel, whatever reason you're intending to travel, there will be a lot of cross-border requirements for you to be vaccinated. So this article says, what's next? It says, expect more companies to announce vaccine mandates, especially after vaccines are approved by the FDA for kids 5 to 12, and eventually those even younger. So hotels, Elite Island Resorts, which operates 9 resorts in the Caribbean, and Highgate Hawaii, which operates 7 hotels in Hawaii, both announced mandatory vaccine policies as others have. So Elite, who does Elite own? Caribbean resorts. So they have Barbados, St. Lucia, the Grenadines, Panama. So they have a bunch of resorts and stuff that will be impacted. So none of those are here. But yeah, it's listen, it's coming. So the US officials are actually debating, here, this one now, whether to require vaccinations to fly both domestically and internationally, according to the Washington Post. So even travel within the US might be something coming on the horizon as well. Because we know that airplanes are one of the hot spots for quickly spreading the virus because of the proximity, how closely you are sitting to other people. So Ms. Sue, thank you so much. Zelda says they used to post a photo and name of everyone who applied for Caymanian status, but that was challenged in court, and now the government stopped citing constitutional right to privacy. Jackie says anyone who does not believe the same as you is not well versed in reality. Your reality said that about half of the world. What? You really said that about half the world? Your reality doesn't make it reality. Okay. My reality is based on facts that can be proven. So vaccine mandates being implemented all over the world. When I say that that's a reality, that's because it is actually happening, and that what makes it a reality. So reality based on facts, not opinions. Charlene, thank you. DJ Dakari says it's like smoking in public. You can choose what to do with your body. Well, you can choose what to do with your body, but you still can't smoke in public places. That's outlawed. You can't go into most buildings and smoke anymore. You can't sit in a restaurant and smoke. That's against the law. You can sit in your house and smoke. And I think I need to find that clip. One of the doctors actually said that. Listen, if you want to get vaccinated, you want to remain unvaccinated and stay home in your house and never go anywhere, then that's your business. You can do that. But if you need to do things like go to the grocery store, you want to go to school, you want to go to concerts, you want to travel on an airplane, there will be restrictions in place. Okay, so Jackie says you are believing half truths. So me seeing lab results are not facts. Well, share your lab results, honey. Share your lab results and see how that measures up to the actual data that is coming from, in some instances, 600,000, 700,000, over 1 million, studied groups of individuals. we talked about one just the other day that was out of, I forget which country now, but it was like, over 1 million Hispanic and Latino people in the US. So yeah, show us your lab data. If you've got millions of lab data to show us, then we can start to believe those things. Listen, we live in the 21st century. We live in 2021. The very idea, and this is where conspiracy theories really have me confused, the very idea that people can even hide stuff anymore is ridiculous. Not even Facebook can hide stuff, because they have inside people who are willing to come out, speak to Congress, get on their platforms and talk about, what the inner workings of Facebook are. They're leaking documents. You've got whistleblowers all over the place. So when people say that all of this is happening and no one in the world knows about it but a select few individuals, all this hidden data. Remember the mechanic from what Caribbean island was he from? Barbados, Bermuda, somewhere about, where he's like, oh, he's gotten these secret documents from Wuhan, China. Oh yes, because a mechanic can get the secret documents, and the likes of an Azan, whatever his name is, the hacker guy can't get these supposed secret documents. It just doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any sense. It makes no logical sense. Like, if you really listen to yourselves, you sound crazy AF. And I'm sorry to say, but you sound crazy. It just doesn't make any... I appreciate the Premier acknowledging the hard work that we've been doing here at CMR. Thanks to Kevin for trying to get accurate information. But for me to be honest and tell you that this is not challenging sometimes to hear the ridiculousness, it really does blow my mind. Like, I feel like I could have a more sensible conversation with my 5-year-old than some people who believe in this stuff. That's God's honest truth. And I don't care. I don't personally care if you're insulted by that. If you're insulted by that, then, like I always say, you don't even have to listen to this program. You've got a choice there as well. So we've got an update from the Coast Guard. Let me just see if I can actually play this live, because this looks like some sort of an update that has literally just come in at 10:09. So let's get this going. So Zelda says, saying it slowly doesn't make it more true. Apparently saying it at all doesn't make it more true. Nothing makes it true for people who simply don't want to believe. Samoya says, actually they are. Every child have to prove vaccination to be able to attend any school in the Cayman Islands. Yeah, mandatory vaccination is required. Oh, Sue says, the next time I go to the water elephant restaurant, say hi to your grandson. Sue, I thought that was him. I saw him. What day was I there? Oh, I got some Tres Leche cupcakes. But I saw him and I thought, oh, that looks like Sue's grandson. But I was actually, I don't hardly ever go on the other side, but I know that they share a kitchen. So I think he came through Pico, and he came through the door and he was delivering some of the cupcakes. And I saw him there. So yes. I thought that might have been your grandson. All right, so let's get the latest update, folks, from the Coast Guard on the search and rescue situation. I'm hoping at least that they can recover the poor guy's body. That'd be the best case scenario. Now, listen up, folks. Here it is.
Good morning. This is Commander Scotland of the Cayman Islands Coast Guard with a 10 a.m. update. Since 6 o'clock this morning, the Coast Guard, supported by members of the Royal Cayman Islands Police Dive Team, the Cayman Islands Fire Service, the Cayman Islands Port Authority, and the...
Oops, my apologies. Hold on.
Supported by members of the Royal Cayman Islands Police Dive Team, the Cayman Islands Fire Service, the Cayman Islands Port Authority, and other members of the community have resumed searching for the missing gentleman. Today's activity, unlike yesterday, will see us using more people in the water, supported by vessels, utilizing what is known as an extended line search. The snorkelers will be checking the ocean floor to see if there are any items relating to the missing person which can be recovered. These searches commenced at Starfish Point and have proceeded in a westward direction towards Governor's Creek. They will then again resume from Governor's Creek, sweeping towards Starfish Point. The search technique being employed is one that is slow and methodical, such for asking persons using the North Sound who are not involved in the search to exercise caution. There are swimmers and divers in the water.
All right, folks. So no significant updates in terms of they haven't found him as yet. Basically, it's now a search and recovery. They're trying to recover the body if at all possible. We know that sometimes once the ocean gets a hold of you, sadly, it is what it is. And, you know, there's no recovering that, right? But I pray and hope that they can at least find him. They're now essentially trying to search the ocean floor because he probably would have sunk already. And so, folks, that message really is just encouraging people to please be careful if you're out in the water today. That area, Starfish Point, up to, you know, the North Sound, Governor's Sound area. Please, please, please be careful. Because there are divers in the water, there's support units out there, there are individual boaters. Everyone is doing their best to try to help all of the rescue efforts, recovery efforts at this point, to see if they can, you know, at least recover his body for his family to be able to bury him. So if you're out on the water today, be mindful that there might be people, rescue divers and others actually in and on top of the water, and, you know, proceed with caution. So thank you so much. Okay, so one final video. Yeah, someone just messaged and said this is very hard to hear. Yeah. Oh, sorry. That was... I'll post that audio note up in a little bit. But yeah, so okay. Thank you, Delcy, for tuning in. Oh, wow, you didn't even know. Oh my gosh. Yes, girl. Where you been? You got to start paying attention to the news. We posted it day before yesterday. So today's what? So it was Monday evening. After 7 o'clock, apparently he fell into the water. So Moya is looking forward to the vaccination drive. Don't worry, we're going to see what parts of it we can actually carry live for you. There is a verification process as well, because the person who wins has to be willing to be publicly named. So maybe somebody might win the $100,000 and say, nah, I don't want it because I don't want anybody to know that I've won $100,000. Who would do that? But you never know. It's entirely possible. So then they go back to the drawing board and they pick somebody else. So I'm hoping that we are all, well, we can't all win. There can only be one winner. So Sue says we got vaccinated in April too, so we're not able to enter. No, every single person, Miss Sue, just to clarify, Moya, every single person who's been vaccinated by the HSA, double jab. So if you're still trying to run in there and get your first one today, then you're out of luck, because I think today's the deadline for the second one. But every single person who's been double jabbed by the HSA is eligible to win the $100,000. So you're all automatically entered. You don't have to do anything else. The HSA has a record of everyone who's been vaccinated here by them, and that is how you are eligible. So yes, you're eligible, Miss Sue. What would you do with $100,000? Miss Moya, you're eligible as well. All right, let's watch a video coming out of the UK today, and then we'll end the program after this. Thank you guys so much for tuning in.
When Kobe was born in August, Kelsey couldn't be there to hold him. At 29 weeks pregnant, she'd become seriously unwell with COVID. She was placed into an induced coma and woke up to discover her son had been delivered.
I can't quite get my head around what's actually happened, like being told it and being told other people's experience and like family members whilst I was in the coma and everything is quite hard to hear.
Kelsey was unvaccinated, a decision she now regrets.
If anyone was told that they would be put into a coma and potentially dying, I think you'd probably consider it a lot more. But I think I'm going to get it now.
Recent figures show almost 20% of critically ill COVID patients are unvaccinated pregnant women.
We know that if you get COVID in pregnancy, especially later in pregnancy, there is a risk that you may get a more serious form of COVID. You may be admitted to the hospital. You can have the vaccine at any stage during pregnancy. We've got increasing amount of data that tells us that it does not increase the risk of miscarriage, it does not increase the risk of stillbirth, and it does not increase the risk of prematurity.
Data shows contracting COVID during pregnancy can increase the chance of a premature birth. Olivia was hospitalised with COVID in December when the vaccine wasn't available. A scan shortly after showed her baby had stopped growing.
And there was very low levels of amniotic fluid, which then basically means that, you know, the baby could be stillborn. So at that point, they then said, right, we're going to induce you. So within 48 hours of making that decision, they took me into hospital and I was induced. And Jude was born at 39 weeks.
Decisions may be emotionally complex, but the advice is clear. Pregnant people can and should get vaccinated. It doesn't increase risks, but may avoid heartbreak. Jemima Walker, Sky News.
All right, folks. So there you have it. More and more data showing why pregnant women should get vaccinated. You're taking a risk not only for yourself, but even your baby having some complications if you catch COVID during pregnancy. I cannot imagine any mother making a decision to not get vaccinated, knowing that she could very well die shortly after childbirth or even during childbirth because she's pregnant with COVID and leaving a child behind, or having your child die as well because of a decision that you've made. Folks, you've been listening to another edition of The Cold Hard Truth. We give it to you cold, we give it to you hard. You guys have a wonderful day.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of The Cold Hard Truth. Make sure to check Facebook for showtimes and more information and the latest news at CaymanMarlRoad.com. Subscribe to our IG and Facebook pages to get the latest happenings.